Yeah, I just want to know.
Good morning, council. We thank you for the adjustment this morning to shift over. The mics are on in the room, so everything from an audio perspective will be captured on your mics. The Shure mics are just going to be for voting today. It would provide too much feedback according to the AV folks if we had both mics on. So you won't be able to use that, but I can acknowledge you when you want to speak so that we can do it. We call the meeting order as we do with every meeting. We'll start out with a prayer and invocation. Who wants to take us up on today? We'll get Council Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, dear Lord. We thank you for another great day that we are able to come here and do the business of your people, Heavenly Father. So bless this meeting today. Bless those who are in it, and let our minds be focused on your people. We ask these things in your son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council. I think we're joined remotely. Councilmember McMillan is online. Councilmember McMillan, can you hear us?
I hear you loud and clear. And thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. All right, so Council, with the 4.0 is the approval of the agenda. If we can get a motion to approve, we could move. The goal is to get some of these subliminal presentations out of the way. Of course, this is a scheduled budget work session that we're going to need most of our time to concentrate on that. So if we can approve the agenda. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll go to you for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we approve the agenda and move item 5.3 to make it 5.1 and 5.1 be 5.18.
All right. All right. Motion and a second to approve the agenda with the order of 5.3 is 5.18.
5.1 and
5.1 and then 5.1 is 5.18.
Correct.
All right. Motion and a second. Discussion. All right, Council, look to you for your votes. The Shure system is live on vote.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you can use it for voting.
All right. Councilman McMillan, what's your pleasure, sir?
Green, please. Thank you.
So motion carries 8-0, 7-0.
7, are we missing?
Well, plus him.
Yeah, 8.
Missing Davison first. Yeah.
So, all right, motion carries. All right, so with that, 5.1 now was 5.3 formerly. Council, as you know, the current youth protection ordinance that was in place was scheduled to expire on the 30th or 31st, was it, Mr. Manager?
27th.
27th, okay. And so wanted to make sure, since that caught a number of council members off guard, to see if there's an appetite to renew. I think Chief Bryant gave us a great report, 42% reduction in a lot of places, and I think things are moving in the right direction. So, Chief, thank you and your team for hard work in the briefing the other day. So, with that, Council, I'll look to you for action. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the continuance of the youth protection ordinance and get updates probably quarterly or semi-annual from the police department.
Second. All right. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Hare. Madam Attorney, you had something?
Just that it requires 2 readings because of the criminal component, so we will put it on the next reading.
All right. All right. Council, any discussion? And then we'll look to you for your votes. Sure,
Your
sister.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I have if I may.
Yeah. All right. Yes, sir. Well, we'll actually vote, but yes, sir. I didn't see you.
And no worries. Yeah, would urge the council not to go down the road when I talked about bad policy, as I have quite a few times over the last month. This youth ordinance / youth criminalization curfew, something that many members of the residents cautioned against the harm that it could bring youth that are targeted because of their age. Another point that was brought out very clearly by residents is the constitutional rights that are infringed upon when you discriminate in this way. And then just another quick point in terms of the leanings of our policy, to focus on criminalization and then talk about decreasing the resources towards youth, decreasing the resources towards youth, and then also failing to focus on youth in a way that builds them up, that puts into them the promise of what they could be. I think across the board, this has been a bad idea. I also want to raise the point that when asked on the dais about enforcement of this, there have been a couple of admissions that this is not an ordinance that is easily legally enforceable. And just in having said that, I don't think I'm alone. I know I'm not alone in the city in underscoring that this is bad policy and something that we should go ahead and turn away from. But I hope that there's members on the council who understand how much of a misstep this policy is. And that takes the opportunity this morning to move on and focus on things that are more productive, things that are clearly constitutional, and things that are worth our time.
All right, thank you,
Mr.
Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Jones, and then here.
Yeah, just a quick question, Madam Attorney. You said that once this goes forward, it's going to be on a current, it's going to be on a regular meeting where it could potentially be discussed again.
Yes, sir. With 8 votes on Monday, it could be added to that agenda. Otherwise, it would appear on the June 22nd agenda.
Thank you.
All right, Councilman Hare.
Thanks, Mayor. As I go back in memory on the curfew item, and I know we didn't say anything about a shot spotter, but I can include that too, because I think that's coming forward soon. But as far as this curfew, there were a whole lot of rumblings about curfew and disproportion of maybe arrests or harassments and other things like that were brought forward. And even if we look at the shot spotter, there was those same type of things. People would be harassed and just on and on and on with these two items. As I have talked to my residents all over the city, to include, well, in and outside of my district, but most definitely inside of my district. And when I made those proposals to them concerning the curfew and slash shot spotter, as I say, it's not a title subject matter right now, they supported it. Even some of the young dads that were in some of my community watch meetings, they supported it. Now, with all of the, we just had our first part of our report from our police chief, and I think I asked that question, and we all heard that those two tools working together are being very helpful as other tools, but we haven't received any of those concerns that were spoken about, that were highlighted with hot fire, as if some folk were getting ready to be arrested and thrown in jail. And we saw that not to be the sense, at least not to be the sense in the city of Fayetteville. So I give a big thumbs up to our police department and other staff in how they handle folk. I just had a meeting, not a meeting, but a conversation on the phone with someone the other day from the Cornwall community, where I have a lot of things going on sometimes, especially over within the Roy Turner Park. And residents were saying, please, please, please push, as school is out, push the laws that we have on the table, kind of help with certain things, especially with kids. And so I will support this. I think we voted. If we haven't, I will support it now, and I'll support it again, because we have seen it to be a good tool. And we haven't seen the pushback ramifications as have been stated from the microphone. We got a lot of things that's like that people sometimes can come out and speak, totally against, but we don't always have the proof to support those things. So just wanted to put that out there because I know it was a big item and still is a big item for some in our city.
Thank you, Councilman Harris. Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, you
Yeah, those aren't working.
Oh, they're not
we
working.
hear you, but
Y'all are gonna have to speak up because it's very difficult in here. I have tinnitus and the low ceiling height makes it really hard to hear. So, I just want to go on the record that I stated the first time we voted on this that I was not personally for this, and I'm still there. However, I'm gonna yield to the professionals. I know that the chief likes this tool, and I've had conversations with him, and I also know that many in my district want this tool. So I will be voting in favor for those reasons. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem, you had a.
Yes, just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, and I thank my colleague DJ Hare for his comments because that is true. According to the last quarterly briefing that we had, none of what was insinuated had data to sustain. But one thing I think a lot of the public don't know is I just had our new chief, Captain Bohannon, come to his first community watch on Tuesday, and we were talking about community engagement. Chief Brian, I don't know if the community is aware for what he told me, and if I'm saying too much, you just let me know. I didn't know that him and Major Joyce went to Texas recently in reference to community engagement. And what he brought back and displayed to the community watch meeting is Fayetteville is above and beyond everybody else who was there. Do you want to comment on that, Chief, or Chief Joyce?
I'll let Chief Joyce, because he was there.
Yes, sir. So we were there, and I mean, you had agencies represented from across the entire country.
Speak up a little bit, Chief, so we can.
Reverend Markel Hutchins, who does National Faith and Blue Weekend, he has put this conference together. This is the 4th year they've been doing that. And you find out a lot of times, you have the agencies from California, New York, Texas, all over that are a lot larger than we are. And you find out as they go through their presentations, wow, I was proud, and we talked about that.
You don't have that.
It was head and shoulders above a lot of other places. And we see that when we have officers who come in, lateral officers from large agencies, what they receive here, what they get here, it's night and day. So it's good to know what we're doing and that you're already doing a lot of those programs. Are there ways that we can always sharpen the sword? Absolutely. So those are things that we have to look at doing to make sure we're doing the most. But it was a good feeling to say, wow, we're doing all.
Thank you, Chief. I just wanted the public to hear that, to see that our police officers are going out, getting this information and bringing it back to the city of Fayetteville, so we don't have those instances that was insinuated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilman Hondros, you press.
I called the question. It's gonna be a long meeting. Let's just vote it.
All right, so council, we'll look to you. Question's been called. Let's look to you for your vote. It's your system.
I do have another point of discussion on the second round, if I may.
We're voting now, Councilmember McMillan. Sorry.
Are we withdrawing the second round? Is that what you're saying?
Call for the
No, he
vote.
called for the vote. Question.
No, I had another point of discussion.
All right, well,
You're ending discussion prematurely?
yes, sir.
That's just not up there.
Oh, so, hold on.
Yeah, so the calling the question is improper unless
Second
we've
round.
completed this.
All right.
second round.
All right, so, Madam Clerk, strike that. We'll hit it back. Councilman McMillan, second round, final round.
Yeah, thank you. And let's continue to be fair in our dealings with each other.
Yeah.
This is going to be a long meeting. First point, it's interesting that this comes up at the beginning of a budget session. I think it underscores how much time we have wasted on this meaningless youth criminalization curfew. The fact that it is actually eating up time when we should be talking about where we can place our resources to move this city forward. That's the first point. And I said stuck on stupid the other night. This is one of those things that's in that list. If we continue to waste our time on bad policy that uses the language even of criminalization instead of in a positive forward-leaning way, pouring into the future of our city, it's going to be to the continued detriment of our residents, the people we're supposed to be serving. This also speaks to philosophy and leadership. If you have a ordinance that by name by description, focuses on youth as if they are a problem to be criminalized, to be persecuted. If you have a philosophy and a leadership that puts the target on the backs of youth in this way, you will continue to breed the ass backwards type of attitudes that we have towards our youth. And I think that the city does a disservice to everyone when we continue to pour time, resources into this type of ordinance. Also want to go to a point that the chief made about how this is enforced or not enforced in terms of going around looking for youth after curfew and pulling them over in terms of targeting. I would argue that there seems to have been some restraint in how this has been executed. And that points to the fact that this was unnecessary in the first place. If it is coming down to an enforcement of our laws, a police force that has continued to look for infractions, that has continued to look for crime, instead of looking for people of a certain age, a certain description, according to the last police chief, a certain height,
Councilman McMillan.
then they're doing what they should be doing. And this type of policy, it eats at the face of common sense and decency in terms of enforcement of the laws.
All right,
I
thank you.
appreciate the time to say that.
Yes, sir. And let me finally say, the fear mongering that is constantly done by the groups that come in to tell us that we don't need ShotSpotter, you don't need school police resource officers, you don't need protection in your communities, always come from outside the communities and never from within the communities that are experiencing that. And so my hope would be that we not try to make this and pit this one against another, that criminalization was not used in anything about this ordinance until it was brought up in the discussion a few minutes ago. It's called Youth Protection Ordinance. None of the things that they said would happen have happened with that or ShotSpotter. And if one of our children are saved because police officers have the ability to intervene something and prevent it from happening, we've seen that the reward to the risk outweighs that. We've seen that ShotSpotter recovers shells and guns and gets them off our streets. 90% of the shooters and 90% of the victims are African Americans, but we have people from outside our communities that tell us what we need in it. So I think the waste of time is to colossally make everything a confrontation and a fight. But the residents who are enjoying a 43% reduction in homicides and the kids who are enjoying the ability to be able to play in their neighborhoods that other people don't even visit are the beneficiaries of good policy. I think we can do that and invest in proactive measures. So, Council, I thank you. Council, question has been called unless there's a second round from another councilman. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting frustrated with the innuendos and the data doesn't prove what you're trying to state. If you don't have any proof behind it, I don't know what the end game is, but we need to move forward and do what's best for our community. And what's best for our community is been proven by the data that was just recorded in the last quarterly briefing for our police department. So I think it's unfair to try to criticize what our police department is doing or is not doing if you don't have the data to back it up. Thank you.
All right, question's been called, second round. I don't see any others. Let's vote. Councilman McMillan.
Yeah, strong red.
All right. And so motion carries.
Listen,
For
listen one.
Councilmember Jones, sir.
I'm good. It's not working.
Okay, what's your pleasure, sir?
Good.
Green, okay.
All right, so motion carries 7-2. All right, moving on. There was a update, Mr. Manager, on opportunity zones.
Yes.
All right, turn it over to you. Mr. Colley?
Yeah. Sharon.
Give us some good news, your last report, had me sad.
All that great work my team's been doing.
You had me sad in the other room.
Yeah, I bring you low and lift you up,
Lift me up today.
So we're back today to talk about council's direction in putting this together, and I just opened the wrong presentation. Give me a second, sorry.
Is anybody else cold?
Not yet. I'm not cold until my arm freezes and falls off.
Don't turn it up, please. A lot of people.
Till my arm falls off.
That's right.
It's all right.
So we're coming back to you today to just confirm council's preferred approach before we submit the opportunities on recommendations to Commerce. Following the work session, staff did additional track review and coordinated with FCDC, and Robo's in the back there to jump up here in a few minutes. Just a reminder from Monday, there's 31 eligible tracks in Cumberland County, 25 are wholly or partially within Fayetteville. Cumberland has 4 available nomination slots for the next 10-year designation period. So we're looking for council's direction. We've got a couple scenarios that we're proposing. So one of the questions council asked at the last meeting was about existing opportunity zones. So you can see up here on the map that we have existing opportunity zones in the Murchison Road area coming through the downtown and some of the eastern side. And then one over here, I think that's about near Bingham, Hope Mills Road area. These are the eligible tracks for this time around. We saw this map on Monday, so I'll just kind of flip through this. You can see here that we have compared the eligible tracks this time around with the old tracks. So you can see the overlaps here. The things in green are the overlaps. The ones in blue were eligible and are no longer eligible. Ultimately, we went from 9 tracks that we currently have in place to an availability of 4 that we can nominate now. So it makes it a bit tighter. So the strategic approaches that Robert and I talked about was rather than come in here and have like some kind of like ranked choice voting on 25 different sites, we looked at 3 different strategies. A redevelopment and housing focused strategy, what sections would have the most impact in our community towards that goal, what aligns with revitalization, what existing plans do we have that we could capitalize on. Then looking at classic economic development, jobs, growth, tax base, and where do we have available commercial property? Where is there private sector interest? Where is there new access to infrastructure and transportation? And ultimately, we kind of made a measured staff recommendation out of that we'll talk you through. And so those are the 3 options that we've kind of put in front of everybody today. So on the redevelopment and housing focused, we are looking at the strongest alignment with housing, neighborhood transformation, the downtown reinvestment, and existing revitalization work. So this is the east and west side of Murchison Road, the downtown core, and then 301 towards the river. Right.
Murchison
Up to Pamela Country Club. Yes, sir. Yep. The next option we have is focused on growth, jobs, and tax base. So we've got down here, Dunn Road, Cedar Creek area. Then we've got over on the west side, we've got 295 Cliffdale Rayford Road. Then we've got the Shaw Heights area that's right across from Amazon. And then we've got 2 options here. We've got Northgate and MacArthur Road area. And then we also have the downtown 301 area as well. So we would be looking for council to kind of, we have a strong recommendation on these, but there's 5 to pick from to select 4 on that one if we go with the solid economic development.
So did have a question on that. One, this 2.0 has a rural kind of kicker to it to where they really want communities that's right outside of urban cores. So I know Shaw Heights fits that because it's an area that's not in the city, but it's close. Question becomes, Eureka Springs is near to MacArthur. We're putting $20 million in a sports complex. Do you all see any opportunity there? And the second question is, does this cover like the area where the cricket stadium is being built? I saw you got river and east of river, but East Fayetteville is kind of prime. It's got land, and that's one of the census tracts. And the final question is, were there any census tracts in the west?
because they also have large tracts of land, but I know most of that's in the city out there.
Yeah, so I'll take the last one first. The western tract that we recommended including was over here. That is, what's the name of that? Buster Bean.
Yeah, Buster B Road, yeah. Cliffdale and 295.
Yeah, it's kind of in that area. And then,
That's like room.
yeah.
Nothing in the southwest, just west.
So I think that, that including MacArthur and looking at, a sports complex and the impact that could have on development, I think that's an important consideration. That's one of the reasons we looked at that area. Robert really analyzed the 1402 here for available commercial space and redevelopment opportunities. What we have.
To your point, Mayor, that is the furthest you can go east that qualifies, and that picks up Dunn Road, 24, and Cedar Creek, pushing out on that kind of growth corridor, and some of that would be leading on to extension of new PWC utilities out there.
All right, Councilman Hare.
Can you go back, Chris? Were there other areas that fall within that guideline that we could have chosen from before you went to this slide, or did I misread something?
So I want to keep in mind that we have three scenarios. This is the redevelopment and housing, and then the economic development and growth, and then a balanced approach.
Now,
so this was the redevelopment and housing piece.
Okay, and we have already chosen this already, hasn't part of Murchison Road already been in the opportunity
It
zone?
has been it was previously in there, yes.
It would not be moving forward. It doesn't stay in. We're now selecting.
So we have to reselect it.
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
we're down to only 4.
Okay, and this is for housing.
This is for tax credits for investors for economic development, commercial, retail, housing, affordable housing can sometimes apply, but it's a little iffy.
And when it's like this, so when you go down Murchison Road, what size are you choosing from? Are you choosing from both sides of the corridor? What's the dimension from the Murchison Road corridor? How deep in on both sides, all the way up to, how far you go up to Shaw Road?
Right here is this recommendation on redevelopment. It goes up to Pamela and Country Club.
Okay.
Because it stops right there.
Well, then
You have to
even
pick
right
up the
there,
other ones, yeah.
even right there, as far as Pamela,
Yeah.
how far off of the corridor are you going? Does that include everything within?
That's substantial. So
Yeah,
that's
the tracks are
So both
along
sides.
along the Little Cross Creek and Big Cross Creek.
Mhm.
So it kind of makes that little wedge. It basically is what our choice neighborhood footprint is.
Yeah. Whenever we get to that point to support it, council, I wish you would at least consider at least the housing development part. The Murchison Road corridor has been forgotten for, periods and periods of time. So it was already there before. Did we do anything when we had that first hitch with the corridor? I don't remember any movement.
But I'm sorry, what was that?
When the first period
Right.
of the opportunity zone, which included this area, was there any movement on it? Because I don't remember.
There was some retail neighborhood services development, I believe, that was financed through the Opportunity Zone program. And I think that's something that, as Chris works towards the recommendations, we looked at, with only a limited number of options that you could recommend, we looked at where we know we are working already and it supports us. We looked at areas where we want to stretch to, but also things with so few, we looked at where we felt that the Opportunity Zone could be a true inducement to action in that tract. I'm going to steal a little thunder, Christopher, but at times we talked about the 295 piece, and at times we talked about the piece east of the river. East of the river, we've got the vacant Sophie building, other vacant warehouses, and some land. On the 295, it's land, we're talking to the property owners, but you don't have a lot of problem attracting interest going west on Rayford Road. And there's nothing there right now that would not potentially happen without on-market forces. If you're talking about rehabbing, getting investment into existing property and upcycling it, that's where we kind of had to lean in on where we would do the.
So with 295 in the corridor and us already having the Murchison choice and the part that we did win with the planning, this makes this a very good possibility to support.
If you were to make me choose, sir, I'd pick going east of the river over the 295.
So
I'm not gonna ask you.
So I know the mayor want to say something. I do want to ask if we could go to the balance recommendation and chew over that one real quick, but if you want to just.
Yeah, let me get Mayor Pro Tem and I need to throw something in to Councilman
I
Harris.
want to throw something in on that one too, because your recommendations, I'm trying to understand what's the difference between the west side and the east side if Councilmember Harris just said you're going up both sides. That's what I'm confused at. And which out of the 10 and 11, which one is your recommendation?
10, and I'll talk about why.
Okay. My second point is that 1402, is that where the cricket stadium is going? Or am I too far out?
You're not quite there yet,
Not there yet. Okay.
but you are working in that direction.
All right, all right. And so council, the conversation had with USDA, with folks who were drafting this 2.0 with the rural concentration is that the kickers are that if you drop it right outside of urban areas, you take rollover money. So let's say what it is, let's say you sold a piece of property and you made $100,000. So you either pay taxes on the $100,000 or you invested in one of these places. The first opportunity zone really didn't kick in because the rules weren't clear and it attracted a little bit of investment, but it wasn't enough to make it worthwhile. Like they did it across the street. Those guys got some opportunity zone investment that Peter Floss is dealing with, but a lot of our places were not strategically placed to where other stuff was happening. But this is with them doing that, the way I understood it, if it goes into the right area, USDA provides money for multifamily, right? And let's say they'll pay vouchers to some developer who made $1 million on something that doesn't want to pay taxes. And if he builds multifamily in Shaw Heights, he gets other stuff because it's in an unincorporated area. So you got to think about it in terms of it may not be right here where things are right now, but this administration is more on a rural base to where you're growing to. So that's why it's going to be important to align it where there's things that are planned. Like if Robo says there are large tracts out by 301, that PwC is also trying to do something, or you may have some other things there, or Cedar Creek, it may work better for us that way. I think the Murchison Road piece, some of that urban core, like where the neighborhood choice stuff is, I think in order for us to get the real bang out of this, we've got to be up farther enough like Shaw Heights to encourage somebody to go into there to do something because it's still unincorporated and they get the benefit of it. So I guess Chris may catch that on the next slide. You had something?
Yeah, yes, sir. So I'd kind of jump to the staff recommendation here a little bit. So just to kind of talk you through this was bringing in the existing commercial that needs to be redevelopment down here at the Cedar Creek Highway 24 Dunn Road area, continuing the downtown core and our longstanding investment there. The west side of Murchison Road, which has Murchison Townhouses and Elliott Circle. And it also has a lot of available land around on that side. When you look on the east side of it, there's some redevelopment that needs to be done, but there's not big tracts of land available to build on. And so that was kind of why I thought that way. And then moving up from there into more of the Shaw Heights, but on the commercial side of it. And I think one thing that's worth considering is that even though this little white thing is right here, the census tracts don't follow city limits. And so this would be recommending a portion of it in the unincorporated area as well. So, at the end of the day, Cumberland County as a whole gets 4. Taking them all in the city of Fayetteville is going to be a question that the state's going to have. And so this does put some into the county as well. I think that's a really good kind of compromise up there. So that's kind of where we got our recommendations to land at. Now, I did have a slide here because, I think it is worth kind of talking about the fact that there's a lot of, it's on the east, right? All the recommendations we have are on the east side of Fayetteville. And so, we looked at this. We only have 4 to select. And Robert kind of opened up with this, right? Like we needed to look where we could support initiatives that could be happening, right? So existing redevelopment plans and public investment, vacant or underutilized property, and realistic private investment that'll happen in the next 10-year designation period. Because I'll be back here in 10 years to talk about other places that we need to prioritize when we re-up this again. And so while it does look like it's geographically skewed, it really was a thoughtful exercise of meeting the governor's, priorities and which one of these meets which priorities and where those opportunities lie. So that is the staff recommendation. And then from here, we're, really looking for you guys to, tell us if you want to lean more redevelopment and housing, growth and tax base, the measured recommendation, or some other direction. And we're happy to talk through that.
All right, Councilmember McMillan and McNair and Jones.
Me too, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question, Chris, about the 33.12, that parcel. Is that southern boundary, Rim Road? And are we looking at Cliffdale Road coming down kind of through the middle of the center of that southern boundary?
Yeah, part of that is Rim Road. That entire little slice right there is just a single family neighborhood. And so when we talk about what opportunity zones can do and what they incentivize, an already built single family neighborhood doesn't really fit into it, and that weighed into that decision heavily.
Okay, and there is a strip of businesses on the front side of that. If we're talking about the neighborhood where Montebello, or the street where Montebello, Bone Creek are, there are a string of shops there, but there's some undeveloped land right across the street in District 7. I appreciate you clarifying what that southern boundary is. Just go back to a question. Still haven't heard really addressed, but would love to, as this develops, get some focus. Is how is heavy investment in these zones benefit from some of those zones where there's tremendous gray space and lack of consideration. Not a question necessarily that needs to be answered today, but I want to be able to go back to my district, which is largely uncovered on this, and talk about the benefits of these zones to all of us in terms of growth and in our direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And my apologies, I meant Councilman Davis, then McNair and Jones. And
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You called me already.
I just wanted to make it clear that, first of all, I like the staff recommendations. Because one of the reasons I was, of course I did.
District.
Yeah. One of the reasons I was elected was because of the east side has been forgotten about. So y'all can laugh. I know y'all think it's funny.
Yeah, the district's got one little part, but go ahead.
I personally like your recommendations. Like I said, one reason I had long talks with Ms. Mabel Smith is because of the forgotten about east side of Fayetteville. So I think that this is a very important to, I know that you guys want to grow out West Fayetteville, but let's be clear of who has been forgotten about before West Fayetteville was in the parks, right? So we have a long overdue commitment to these communities that have been forgotten about.
I'm supporting you.
Thank you, sir. All right, and then number 2 is the downtown. I believe the downtown, we've all had conversations reference to downtown and how we want to grow downtown.
I'm supporting that too. You don't have to pitch, you're a good
I just want to
salesman.
make it clear that these are the 2 investments that and then of course Marcus Road. So thank you all for hearing me out.
All right.
I don't take nothing off the
You
board.
did a good job, brother. Good job.
District 2.
Councilmember McNair.
I just wanted to find out from Chris, the conversations we've been having in our community development and revitalization. What part does that play within this? Because we're focusing on the entire city, especially out west. What part does this play in creating the policies that we need to move forward in development?
I'm glad you asked that, because I think that goes into Councilmember Davis's. Right. So we did not pick the yellow places.
Okay.
Right. This is what the federal guidelines are that says these areas of the city qualify.
Okay.
This is not about land, it's about people, right? So when you see these yellow areas, that's where the majority, the preponderance of people in those areas are lower income, right? And so when we talk about a lot of our community development programming, a lot of things that we do to try to fix inequities in the market, right? Where business will take care of business, but we've got to do some stuff to help. It's going to tend to go towards where concentrated low income
Gotcha.
households are. And so, when it comes down to it, we talked about, we have programs that are based on the household. And so anybody in West Fayetteville, North Fayetteville, East Fayetteville can take advantage of those programs. But when we look at things like this, where the federal government says you need to be in an area of concentrated lower income, then this is what the map looks like. And so based on these yellow areas, we only get to pick 4. And so this is our effort to try to make the best decision that we can on the 4. And, to the West Fayetteville piece here, I'm going to ask probably Robert to help me out here in a second. We heavily considered, I think it was 3307 here.
Yeah, I think 3307, definitely, because where that lines up, but also even along Rayford Road, you've got some at the top there, but it just came down to where we thought we could get, this draws in outside capital. And so where would be an inducement to make someone look at a project they otherwise would not consider here in Fayetteville. And so we went to the tracks that we thought had the highest potential to leverage that, and where we need that outside capital the most to overcome market barriers.
And keep in mind, this is not federal funds coming to us, right? These are tax incentives for investors that have a market and a good reason to build somewhere to begin with.
Are these site-ready sites? Do they already have water and sewer?
Not the Shaw Heights area. I think that's part of the reason for selecting that is to start working in that direction. 38 is downtown, that's infill. The Murchison Road west side is infill. And then 1402, I know you're working on some capacity.
Needs to be extended out further, yeah.
All right, got Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2402, how far down does that go? I do like that side because for me, that northern side of Murchison has also been forgotten. I think we got a lot of opportunity. I spoke with Robo earlier in the year about that. I know there were some potential challenges, but that area to me being that it's a corridor from Fort Bragg into town, that end of Murchison has also been kind of overlooked. We know it grows into the county, but 2402, where does that span again?
That's just right to Pamela Country Club. That's that kind of wavy line here is Pamela Country Club.
And goes east to the creek.
Yeah.
And then north pretty much till you almost get to 295.
Yes. And so when looking at the 2401 and 02, the west side and the east side of the road, the west side is a lot of residential, small individual parcels, while the east side is a bit more commercial development. And so we think with 295 being there and the potential for an opportunity on investor, commercial development seems more likely to happen.
Some vacant tracks still.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm definitely in support of it. Then lastly, where was, not that I wanted on there, just wanted to know, 2501 the MacArthur Road track, was that close to the 295, or was that in another different area where you all were potentially looking at?
I want to double check real quick, but I think I just lost that one. Yeah, okay. So that one is here, and yes, that goes, it touches 295 a little bit there. But that comes down to, all the way to Ramsey and catches some of the retail redevelopment that needs to occur there as well. As the mayor mentioned, you got the MacArthur Road Sports Complex. You've got some private sector interest in reinvesting in that area, and so there's some things that that are in the pipeline, I guess.
Yeah, what I would say, if we had seven tracks and 3 more, I think it's very easy to see where they'd be. It's just, that's where we just.
No, it's good. Well, I'm in support. Shaw Heights was one of the ones I was going to advocate for, so I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Green.
Thank you. I hope that as we move through this exercise and we are successful in getting these 4 recommendations through the process, that we will begin to collectively think about what we want those parcels to look like. Because in my perception and my length of time that I've worked with economic development here in Fayetteville, I've seen us not do that. And we need to be very focused. We need to think about corridors that come from downtown out into the arteries of the city and what that looks like when you get to these parcels and how we can develop and kind of how we can visualize what goes there. And I know this is the world that Robo lives in every day, And it's up to us to help him see that vision and what we all have collectively as the vision. So I just don't want us to pick these parcels and stop and think that our job is done, because it's just the beginning.
I agree.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Green. So, council, as we wrap this up, the Ramon, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, the governor gets the discretion to approve these. It's is four for our county. Have there been any conversation with the county? Because we don't want to have a list and they have a list, and then he has to pick and choose what is off of the city and county's list when there should be some alignment.
I've shared that this is occurring here. The only tracks eligible, and I'll say serving the whole county. I know I've mentioned it one time that the 3408 in Spring Lake is a community of need. Because I serve everyone, that's a track. But other than that, there are no other
So they
tracks
don't have
out
any other
there.
tracks to
that-
qualify.
Yeah,
Okay.
for the eastern one, 1402, that is the most beneficial probably to the county as the county itself unincorporated. And then 3408 for Spring Lake would be the only other one. That's the only one that conceivably would be.
All right, so y'all need direction on these four recommendations. Council, any other questions on that? Because we gotta keep it moving. We're an hour in and then got to the good stuff. All right, so I'll look to you for your votes on it. You had a question?
No, you have to make a motion.
Yeah, I need a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we give ECD consensus to move forward with these four plots to be done before June 7th, I believe.
Council.
Is that the measure recommendations?
That's it.
Which form? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Second, sir.
Where's the four that you had up there? That's what she's.
That's them right there.
No,
Last one.
last
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, right
There's
there.
no four right there.
All right, so there's a motion by Councilmember, by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Hare. Discussion. All right, council, look to you for your votes on that. Councilmember McMillan.
Green.
All right. All right,
Unanimous.
motion carries. Good luck, guys. Go back some business.
That's not it.
All right, so council moving to 5.2, recommended budget. So council, as you know, the reason, I got a chance to talk offline to many of you, but the reason we moved over here, this was an area that we were able to be a little bit more in a work environment as we got into the budget. You know, we've had our previous 3 meetings over there when there were presentations. It was mostly staff presented it to us. They had an opportunity to answer our questions and comments. This provides an area for us to work through some of the questions that we have, to put numbers up here. As you look at the board, I tried to capture what we've talked about the last few meetings that we heard, and if we're missing anything, let's look over here. Again, there are 2 levers that we have to pull. There's one, either you get more revenue, which is by taxes, fees, or some other service, or you cut and save and consolidate. And so today, we have 2 things that we're dealing with. One is we've asked a lot of questions about where we can save. And so I think today, if we can work through our questions that are here, any questions we missed, so that we can get a good sense of what it is that we're working with from a fund balance perspective and how much capacity that we have. If we get through all of that, then we can look at the parking lot, because that's going to take a detailed decision once we know how much we have as to what things and how we prioritize it. But I think sometimes the conversation gets to this project over that project, and then you have to work to find out where the money is coming from. But knowing where we are, these are some of the things that I've heard that may be captured in the budget chronicles. But if we're missing anything, the vacancies piece, I think Mayor Pro Tem had some questions on that. There may be some answers in these questions that were given, but the vacancies over 120 days, what and how we got to the calculations that were used, and that dollar figure, hopefully at the end of that conversation, can go up there. We understand that it may be baked in a forecast for next year, but no money has been dispersed for the 2027 budget because we haven't gotten there yet. So today, we're just trying to capture numbers, and then after that, we'll take it in whatever direction you all want to go. Same thing on each one of those sections. Yes, sir, Councilmember.
I do appreciate what is written on the board, as soon as we, go ahead and match those numbers over there, then I agree, we can see which way we can go with the parking lot. But also in having a discussion this morning with our city manager, he was saying that in our documents, and he can probably show it to you better than me, or on where we can still do what we can do with a zero tax increase. I want to hear that proposal again, and the base and the items that would be taken away in order for us to stay right there with a zero tax.
Right, so.
Because I don't want to continue to blow this horn, but I am blowing it. I'm not supporting any tax increase, period.
Well, it's not just a horn, it's a Mack truck, but before you, before you do that.
Air horn.
Yeah, but before you do that, if you could, council member, I think what is the manager saying, and he can speak for himself, based on what he has presented to the public and to us, and I'm hoping Mr. Wolverton gets this right, because this is the manager presenting that budget that was in there. What he's presented has a way to carry forth the things that he has in this book, doing it at the funding levels he's talked about. What I want to do, he can briefly hit that, but we've had 3 budget meetings of that, but I think you want him to re-emphasize that there is an option with no tax increase, but that will mean that it will go without some of the things. And that's if you agree with everything that's the way it's been presented. What I wanted to do was kind of let us dive into some of these questions that we have and fill in some of the blanks. But Mr. Manager, you can.
Yes, sir. I guess Dr. Harris would be happy to do that, Mayor, at the appropriate time. As the mayor said, these are some of the large areas that are in the budget chronicles. How many questions did we answer in the budget chronicles? 53 questions. And so, Mayor and Council, with your leave, Jeff has information on and numbers from those budget chronicles and from our AFR that he can actually fill in those numbers on the board now, Mayor, if you'd like.
Well, yes, sir. Well, as we go.
I mean, we have them. We can go ahead and fill them in for you now.
Well, before we do that, I think as we go to number 1, I think Mayor Pro Tem has a question. But the question I have, on the vacant positions over 120 days, I see a lot of them are police. Are any of these the frozen 38? And so you had frozen 38 plus vacancies. So the 38 that were chosen none of these are captured in here. And so how did you freeze or set aside the 38 but keep, because 60% of these are in the police department?
So the 38 are frozen, which means they have no funding.
Right?
So they're authorized positions, but from a budgetary perspective, they have 0 impact on funding unless you add them back. So those are actually open positions or authorized positions that included funding at the departmental level in the budget.
Okay, so just to be clear, so like a police officer, specialist, inventory person position that's been open for 477 days. You're still actively advertising and posting that, and it's being funded, and it's being given the 4% plus the 1% or any increases we've done are captured in that for the last 477 days.
So if I could, Mayor, it is in the police budget. So in the $76 million total police budget is included. They are not included in the 4% calculation for merit increase because that's based on current population. Because if you join the city after July 1, you wouldn't get that increase until your anniversary date. When we do the vacancy savings calculation, we have $8.9 million budgeted in the general fund for vacancy savings. We do it based on actual savings of payroll. So all of those vacancies and the savings on the budgetary basis from that is accounted for in that $8.9 million number. We do it based on dollar value, not based on position itself. So there's already an assumption built into the budget that all of those positions in the normal curve of hiring and vacancies and attrition is going to be $8.9 million.
Right, so 2 points to what you're saying. So with that calculation, what you're saying is that even though we're advertising this, you've already taken the money that would be used to pay this person right here, the position's been open for 144 days. You've already factored that into balancing your budget. But that is just projected because you haven't made any payroll. So we explained yesterday that either you can look at it from a long point of view, to where you say there's a position that's been open for 1,499 days in the city manager's office, right? And so long point of view is you can freeze that and free up that money. And so for the last 1,499 days, even though a person hadn't received it, the money that they would have received is sitting somewhere. And you're saying that instead of you taking that all at once, you're going to use it for some future expense if we approve your strategy.
So historically, the city has used vacancy money, has made this estimate going back as far as I can remember, and the manager has been here a lot longer than I have. But in lieu of saying to the department, for instance, I think you were using a tech in the police department, we're going to reduce your budget because you've had this position open for 120 days. What we say is our anticipated payroll, if all the positions were filled, is let's say $8 million. If that payroll comes in at $7 million, then that is savings across the board. Instead of doing 120 days or saying that position's been vacant for 18 months, what we say is we know that there's going to be turnover not only in long-term positions, but in short-term positions. So we value that, we give an estimate to that value, and historically that value has been used as an offset against total expenditures, against personnel expenditures, to make the budget balance. If the council would like for that to be more, there are strategies that you can employ to slow down hiring or evaluate each position and start to climb above that 8.9 million. But if you were to start cutting individual positions until you achieve 8.9 million of vacancy reductions, you can assume all of those vacancies would be accounted for in the 8.9 million. Does that make sense?
It's a long way home because it's an estimate, it's a projection. So let's just say this assistant city manager that would be paid $152,000. The position hadn't been filled since 2022. Okay, so 2023 there's 152,000. 2024 there was 100 and roughly. If you're saying they're not eligible for the cost of living increases. 2025 there's 152,000. 2026 there's 152,000. Where, since they did not actually go to a person, are you saying the 152,000? You're saying so instead of it being paid to that person, that you moved it somewhere else in the course of that year to pay for something else?
So 1 second, and Mayor, this is, I don't know that, when we had the last session, or session where we covered this, we actually had a graphic that showed quarter by quarter, and we were talking about payroll by payroll. The concept is one that is employed and just trying to understand it. So not to confuse anybody but for me, it was, my rent was $525 a month. My landlord told me that if you pay your rent on time for 12 months, I'm going to give you $25 a month back. But my rent was $525. So I paid my rent on time, and at the end of the year, my landlord would reduce either my last month's rent by that $25 a month. I banked on that. I knew that was coming to me. That's what we're doing with vacancy savings. We're saying we know we're going to have $100 million of payroll budgeted, but we also know that we're going to have $9 million worth of payroll that we will not spend because we're going to have vacancies. So instead of us budgeting, saying that we're waiting until the end of the year to get that $9 million back, we're saying, as I did, or with my house is that $9 million, Jeff, and it's an estimate. It's an estimate. As he said the last time, we're above our estimate already this year for the current year, what we projected. But we, and I'm not going to use that word about baked in, but we know we're going to be $9 million. So we say, where else in the budget might we be able to use $9 million of recurring expenses? And then we play a quarter by quarter waiting game. A couple of years ago, we told the council we were going to underspend our budget by I think it was $0.8 million. A lot of that was the vacancy savings. And if we hadn't gotten to the middle of the year and we were not seeing the growth where we were having that much savings, as Jeff said, what we would have done would have, we told the departments, every position that comes vacant, you will hold for 30 or 60 days, or you have to get written justification from the manager because we have got to create those savings. The other way to do it, and it's just a tool. It's just a tool that allows you to say, we know we're not going to spend the money.
Right, I get that, but let me just use this one particular position, just so we don't get it mixed up. So this 152,000, according to what you're saying, since 2022, so 23, 24, 25, and 26, you knew that you were not going to hire this person. So you use a portion or percentage or some calculation of that money to pay for something else during the course of that year. And you want to continue to do that going forward because none of the expenses have been paid for 2027. So I guess what I'm saying is if you do that across the board, is the estimate you're using accurate, number one, and two, what happens to the previous money and what happens if you ever fill the position? So if you never show us if we never see what your calculation, your starting point for your math, it's tough to get to where the
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, Mayor, and it should be in your package where if you have all the presentations we've done, we actually sat down and went through a year of how that calculation works. So a couple of things. You're correct, it's an estimate. But it's the way the city has balanced its budget for unknown years. If we didn't do it that way, the flip side is your budget would be 8.9 million more in this case. The way that savings gets realized and what happens is at the end of the year, you add up all the revenues and you add up all the expenditures in actual. Then that number becomes your fund balance. That is your change in fund balance, whether it's positive or negative. So any of those vacancy savings that above estimate or below estimate, whichever, work themselves out to the bottom line in your budget or in your financial statement. So every year, those filled positions and unfilled positions, there's a natural attrition that occurs in an organization, not only 128 days, but people leaving and getting refilled. So we try to estimate it based on dollar value, not going into each department and saying, this position you're not going to fill, this position you are going to fill, because this is a.
So wouldn't that, and I'm gonna go to Councilman Alejandro's, that essentially would be the same, right? Because what they're saying is that if you factor this into paying your bills based on not having to pay a city manager for 1,500 days, then that means that you're gonna always keep that going because you're saying you're spending the money before it's accounted for somewhere else. How is that different than going to the department and saying, if you've been able to function without this for 5 years, that we're gonna freeze it like we did police, and now it comes out of the calculation, and that department saves. Because it's the same thing. You're taking money from the general fund to fund what the department says they need, but part of what they need is keeping a position open that doesn't exist that you're using to fund the department.
The difference is that under the model that we use right now is if a department was able to fill that position, they could. Under the version that you're talking about, which absolutely council can reduce positions
How
out.
could then you've counted for the money being spent before?
Because we do it on an aggregate basis. So we didn't look at that position and say that position specifically is going to be vacant. We said our normal payroll is $7 million. We know that our budgeted payroll is $8 million. So we're going to go ahead and take advantage of that savings up front and use it to balance the budget and reduce the rates. If you remember last year, Mayor, there was a lot of conversation. Should we bump the vacancy rate to generate value or generate savings to add to the parking lot? So when we did the 38 positions, what we said is we actually are going to save that money. We're going to cut those positions out and unfund them.
above and beyond. We saw the corresponding reduction in our savings on the vacancy value. But we knew that above all else, we had to achieve those 38 by freezing them and actually, to your point, reduce the budget. If the council asks us to go in and reduce the budget by 8.9 million for surgically taking out positions, we can do that task, but it's going to limit the departments. And we're still going to have a natural attrition. So this is the way the city has traditionally gotten at that natural attrition. Other cities that don't use that tool, what would happen is that annual savings from vacancies would fall to fund balance and then can be reallocated. But the city has chosen historically to use that money up front because we know we're not going to fully expend our personnel budget. No organization, unless they're at 100% staffing, fully expends that. So if council would like that number to be higher, we can take more strategic steps. If you'd like us to identify specifically where to take that out, then we can go back with departments and say, okay, we're going to start pulling positions out and cutting positions. But until you reach that $8.9 million level, you're not going to have a budgetary impact.
All right, Councilmember Hondro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I got several questions. The more explanation we get, the more questions I have. So, Mr. Mayor, your first question or point about the vacancies in police. So as I'm looking at this matrix, there's 26 vacant police positions, right? The best I can tell, 21 of those are sworn and the other 5 are telecommunicators and about 21 or 22 sworn. Can anybody confirm that? Out of the 26?
Would be the police officer positions.
So everything except for the telecommunicators. So there'd be 22 sworn officers and 4 telecommunicators?
There's a public information specialist.
Yeah, that was the other one that I had taken off. So the rest of them are sworn? So I guess my question for Chief or Dr. Hewitt or ACM Yates, how many filled sworn positions do we have today?
We have that report. We can find it beginning of the month. Do you know, Stripe?
I can give you about 2 minutes. I can answer that question.
Okay.
And then, my understanding before this matrix was with the recruits that were graduating this next class of BLET, we would have all the positions filled. Round numbers in my head, about 465 sworn positions. So, and then we're looking at potentially unfreezing some of the 38 frozen positions. But now we're told, if I heard correctly and understood correctly, Mr. Mayor, you asked if these 21 or 22 sworn positions on here that are vacant is not included in the 38. So that's why I just need to know, to wrap my brain around how many sworn positions we have filled today. Because, and I'm not an expert, so I defer to the chief, but a city our size should have at least 500 sworn positions, which is why I was supportive if that was the chief's recommendation to unfreeze the 38 positions to get us up 465 plus the 38 or 35 gets us up to 500.
At the moment, as of 6/2/26, HR is reporting that you have 31, we have 31 vacancies in police officers rank. We have 1 vacant sergeant, and we have 1 vacant assistant chief. Well, that is actually going to be filled as of August 30th. And you have the frozen positions, and you also have 20 overhire, which I think are funded. Is that correct, Jeff? Those are not funded either. And you have 0 vacancies in the stated number of SROs, which is 18.
So let me ask a different question that may kind of get us to the same place. The class that's graduating around this time, or maybe they just graduated, they'll fill the majority of these vacant positions?
They're already counted. Because they are actually filling a spot because we're paying them. So they're an authorized position. When we
If we're
hire them,
paying them, how are they
Yeah,
vacant?
on, open, so.
that's in addition to classes.
So then I need to answer at some point of how many sworn positions we have filled.
385, sir.
385?
385.
I thought we were over 400. Okay, so that's,
The thing about this report, too, is this is positions that from what date to what date had been open for 120 days.
Jerry?
And so when you look at it, it is, like we just said, the assistant chief, it has been vacant for 120 days, but it is technically filled for August. So to ask was, what positions in the city have been vacant for 120 days?
gotcha.
Does that help some?
It does. It does. I appreciate that. So I'll switch gears. So then we got this email with some data for today, yesterday evening, around 10 o'clock or so. I looked at it this morning, about an hour in or so. I sent an email around 8 o'clock because this graph we have right now has the dollar value associated. The one we had in the email attachment didn't, and that's the question I asked, what's the dollar value associated? So when we walk in at 10 o'clock today, magically it appeared. So I think council's frustration, or I'll speak for myself, is that if it wasn't there at 8 o'clock and it's there at 10 o'clock, the information, we had it the whole time. It just wasn't given to us. And that's what we're asking. When we talk about transparency, you know, it's across the board. We can't be transparent in one aspect and not the other. And I think most residents that reach out to me, they want transparency in everything we do, but the most thing they want transparency on is where every dollar, every tax dollar is being spent. And then I'll just close with this. So if I heard you correctly, Mr. Yates, all of these aggregate positions on this list, the aggregate here is about $6,266,000, right? And we're not going to, if we cut half of these or all of these, you're not going to get any, it's not going to have a positive budgetary impact because we haven't met the 8.9 million.
Correct.
So where is the other 2.7 million?
So again, this list is only the 120 days vacancy. So when you have a vacant position in the year, what happens is that position is open for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So there's a constant churn of employees moving around. That's why we do it by payroll, not by position, because that we can account for it in the aggregate and it's additional savings. If you limited it and said, okay, any position's gonna, for 120 days, we're gonna take out, and that's the savings we're gonna recruit, you reduce your savings. So we do it the most aggressive way. Or when I say aggressive, I mean to generate the most value savings, and then we monitor it because it accounts for all that churn of employees that leave.
I appreciate that. So the 2.7 million is in the churn.
It is in the churn theoretically.
And I appreciate also, if I understood correctly, so the vacancy savings, the difference of doing it, or the advantage, I get one advantage of doing it this way is by not eliminating the positions, if those positions are full, the money can be paid, 'cause it's already kind of allocated. Whereas if we eliminated them, then we fill the position, we'd have to appropriate, we'd have to do a budget appropriation. So I appreciate that, but just trying to get an understanding because these are the questions we're getting, or at least I'm getting from residents. So thank you. I'm done.
Yeah, Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're all talking about the vacancy rate. I want to talk about, of 120 days, I want to talk about what I see that's not on this list. As I went to the promotion ceremony for the police department, I talked to Chief Pettit and said, I'm glad that you're promoted because I know Joyce has had his hands full trying to cover the position of 3 other chiefs. So you have 1 assistant chief on this list, and aren't we authorized 3? Where's the numbers for the other 2? Because at one time, we had Joyce, we had Bird, we had Ramirez.
Again, these are the positions that were vacant from February 1 to June 1. So that doesn't necessarily cover if they were filled or if they become filled since that February 1st date, they wouldn't show up on this list because this is only the vacants that are still, that were vacant as of June 1, from February to June 1. Is that, you follow me?
No, I don't.
So this is not a full list of vacancies.
Okay.
The question that was asked was, what are the vacancies that are 120 days old?
Right.
So every vacancy.
Those 2 vacancies are 120 days or older.
But we are we filled them, or they weren't vacant as of February 1st. So they're not 20 days old, or they've been filled since. So there are positions that were vacant on February 1st that were filled between February 1st and June 1st that wouldn't show up on that list because they're no longer vacant.
Gotcha. I'm tracking. Let's talk about two more. The ACMs. You only have one listed. Where's the other one that has been vacant since February?
This is assistant to the manager. That position that you're showing was broke ratings, and when we moved him over to work ARPA, he became our ARPA manager. We started paying his salary out of ARPA funds. We're understanding that ARPA was going to end, and we kept the position open. And when we closed it, we actually moved him to the senior assistant role that now Andrew Mansell has. And that position is one that absolutely can be frozen, cut, canceled. I do have no plans of filling that position.
So where are the two assistant managers? Where's the two city managers listed on here?
They have,
So they're not on this list.
120 days is what, 4 months, 3 months?
4 months.
4 months.
The actual termination, for instance, Kelly, her actual termination date was February 13th.
Resignation date?
So
Resignation date.
resignation date, sorry. The date she left the system. So the way that this is, that you look at it, or the way that we had to pull this information, she had to look at the last time that position was filled. That position, when the assistant city manager position was filled on February 13th, no longer on February 14th. So when you go back to June 1 or to February 1, she wouldn't be included in that list because she's less than 120 days vacant. The day that people leave the organization physically and the date that they on the books leave the organization will stop counting for them and paying them are 2 different days because there's a run out period. So it's entirely possible that there are people that physically left the organization. Michelle Smith Porter, for instance, will physically leave the organization on one day. They won't come to work anymore, but because benefits and those other things run out, they are an active employee until they run out of all those things and they officially process out of the system. So that's the only way to track them is because up until that day they officially cycle out, we still have a business relationship with them from the perspective of payroll and those other benefits.
Real quick, Mr. Mayor, if I can I get you to the board so we can start putting some numbers up here? Because the manager just got finished saying he does not intend on filling that position. So that's a savings of $152,000 that we didn't even know about.
It's not, this is again, the whole idea of vacancy savings.
Mm-hmm.
That position being filled or being vacant is already in the $8.9 million. So we can do it, and if we defund that position for $152,000, then that is no longer a vacancy savings, but it cleans up the book.
So question for you to that point, if you've already factored it in to the 2027 budget to pay expenses, how did you know you weren't going to close it out or eliminate it? Like, so how do you make that decision for 12 months that hasn't happened yet? Like, if we had not started talking about this, at what point to do exactly what you just said you were going to do that it doesn't throw your numbers off?
Absolutely. That's a good question, Mayor. If I can talk to it. And I'm sorry, I can pull this, we can get the slide. It might take us a few minutes, but what we actually can do is go back month by month over the last 24, 36, 60 months, as far back as we want to look and say, our budgeted payroll is, we'll say $8 million for every month. Our actual payroll is $7 million. Over a year, then we can say on average over the last 5 years, we've achieved $10 million of savings or $12 million of savings once you net out overtime. Okay, so the way we estimate that is we say, we know over the last 5 years that we have saved against payroll $8 million or $10 million, or 1 year closer to 19. We kind of spread it over that. But what we then do is we say, okay, knowing like the chief, talking Chief Bryant, is trying to fill all of his classes, that's going to eat into our savings. So then we make an adjustment to that. If the council's desire is to try to achieve more vacancy savings, then we can absolutely move that number up. But the flip side of that is we'll need to probably employ some strategies to achieve that number, which is fine.
Mr. Yates, I get that. Let me tell you what's confusing to me. This is a 120-day vacancy report. Anticipated, for me thinking, anticipated to be filled. As the police chief just got finished saying, he plans on filling these. As I look at the attorney's office, I know she plans on filling these. But then you have a assistant manager position that's been vacant for 2022. And then you have a assistant to the city managers that you say you don't plan on fulfilling. So we don't know what's going to be fulfilled on this list and what's not going to be fulfilled on this list.
And that's right. And you're comparing apples and oranges. Okay, so what you're looking at there is more akin to the vacancy rate, not the savings. Okay, the way that we calculate savings, the volume and number of positions is irrelevant to the savings calculation.
Okay. Well, what I want you to do, okay, I got you. So what I want you to do is I want you to tell us about the savings. At the last presentation, you said that you had already met your vacancy savings at $8.9 million in the middle of May. Tell us how much money that would be by the end of June and put it on the board for us.
I think the actual savings that we've achieved at this point, and we haven't finished the year. So that number was right around, I believe, $800,000 or $900,000. The only caveat I would say to that is that doesn't include overtime. So we see both police and fire.
Give us your best estimate.
I can get with the team and we can give you our best estimate of what that number is going to be.
So we can't put that on the board right now?
What I would tell you is I think the best estimate's probably, you can probably get $1 million.
Okay.
If I had to peg a number.
Can I, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
Actually, we have
and I have a question for you too, Mr. Yates. So, and I'm not saying this because it's just for clarification, right? So, how many of, like, if you look at a specific department like OCS, and it has, and I'm just using that for an example of this conversation, not necessarily that I'm saying anything against it. But if the salaries and wages were budgeted for 153 and there were only 21,000 used, are you saying you've taken that difference already and reappropriated it somewhere else? So I understand you're saying we've got a payroll of 9 million or 7 million on average, but we budgeted for 8. So in your calculations for whatever you do or whatever percentage of that, you know you've got some flex with, for lack of a better word, are you factoring in what's inside of the individual departments like this? There's $130,000 of a variance right here that are 1 month out. So have you already factored in that flex?
Yes, sir, we have. And we don't do it, we do it as an aggregate adjustment and other appropriations for transparency and to know what that estimate is, and also to not understate the true cost of a department. Because if the police department, if we said, okay, police, we're going to reduce $5 million out of your salaries because we think you're going to have 100 vacancies next year, we would be understating the cost of police because you're not budgeting the full amount. So you would see that as one aggregate adjustment across the organization. We factor in all of those things because the organization's normal behavior is reflected in its actual expenditures. And that's what we're trying to get to is what is the savings against budget against normal behavior. And we are able to achieve that normal behavior. And that's that additional amount of money you were talking about, Councilman, is about $1 million probably, give or take. And at the end of the year, once we actually close the books, we'll know. But we still have, we haven't booked all of the payrolls for May yet. And we have payroll for June plus the overhang into the next fiscal year.
So when the positions are frozen, like you did the police, right? How did that factor into something that you've already factored in? Because when it was frozen, you had already factored in using your formula because you said that's a historical practice for us. Right. Second question is, when the county just eliminated 69 or 70 positions out of a department, are they using the same strategies that you're saying that we're using? Are those monies already spent before the commissioners even get a chance to see the dollar amount?
Let me answer that in 2 parts because I can speak exactly to the 38. I don't know about the county specifically. The 38 positions, go back to the year we did $19 million. We came in and said the 38 positions, we're going to take those out of the budget and reduce the police budget by that amount. And actually, it netted against the salary increases that year. But what we said was then we're also going to adjust downward our vacancy estimate. So the year we said we're going to achieve 19 million, the following year we said we're going to achieve 10 or 9 because we'd already taken those frozen out of the equation. So we said we're going to assume we're not going to budget for those 38 at all. Instead of having a higher vacancy number, we're going to go ahead and take those out on the hard line, which is what you're talking about, is go and striking them out of the book. So, and you can see it in our vacancy savings. Over the years, our vacancy savings along because the police has increased staffing and we had those 38 frozen, we've seen that vacancy savings come down. Otherwise, you would have achieved again, you could achieve 15, 16 million, but you took the 38 off the front, not as a savings measure, as a budget reduction.
Understand. But as you look at the police personnel budget, there is no substantial reduction because you asked for a penny to fix a step plan salary increase. So how did you achieve the savings, which you said reduced the budget, but the personnel
Right.
costs
So
went
in
up?
that case, what you did was, when the council voted to do that, we said, okay, we're gonna take the 5 million or the total value of that, those pay adjustments in that year were about 5.6 million. So we said, okay, we're gonna take out 38 positions. That gets you $4 million at the time. Because remember, the positions were valued a lot less. So we're gonna take out the 4 million. We're going to then also freeze the vehicle replacement program. That's gonna generate some savings as well. So the net difference is the penny that you added, because a penny was only worth about $1.5 million at that time. The total value that you needed to do this changes in PD salaries at that time was 5 or 6, closer actually, probably $6.5 million. So to get you to 1 penny, we took other savings and then added on top of that savings what was necessary to get you to where you wanted to be. So you wouldn't see a decrease in their budget. You would see an increase in that area. We just changed the composition of the staffing and the
But you
expenditures.
added a penny to the revenue side. I understand what you're saying on the expense side. You
Right,
took
we
something
added
and-
1.5 million, which was nowhere near the cost of that compensation increase. If you were to pay the full penny value or the full cost of that increase with pennies, it would have been in the 5 to 6 cent range, not 1 penny. So before we raised any taxes, just like the recommendation this year, we empty the cupboard of all the savings available. We put everything in the bucket and we say, okay, these are all the things we can do before we ask for a tax increase. So when we did that same exercise with PD at the time. So the penny was what was necessary, but it was not the full value of the increase that you gave for salaries and for the police increases.
All right. Councilmember Hondros, you had yours? Or that's all?
No, that was, you already got to me.
So do we have a number that's going up here for vacancies?
We put $1 million.
Okay, all right. Closed out projects.
I have that number if you would like me to add that number.
Jeff, we put green markers on the board too, and there's some red ones.
Mayor, would you like me to start adding some numbers to those things up there?
Yes, sir. We'll probably be asking questions to get there. So on the closed out projects, Mr. Jeff, the reason why we're asking for the CIP list like this, I guess we can do with the closed project before we get to the CIP. So you've got the closed project one. Is that in your budget chronicle pages?
It is not exactly as I think you put it up here. So let me just clarify the question, just to be sure that I'm answering the right question. Okay, there's about $1.2 million of money from closed projects that is not reallocated in your recommended budget. So if you were to go, you would have 1.22 million you could reallocate in capital without taking anything out of the recommended. If you wanted to go a little further, there was about 700,000 reallocated within this year's capital plan for those projects that we listed for you. The only caveat is that 1.22 million will reduce your capacity in future years. Because what we do is when we plan the capital program, it's a 5-year program. We take every year, we start with available resources and then projects and planning. So any available resources that fall to the bottom from the prior year then get reprogrammed in the following year. So you can achieve savings in 1 year. The implication or the impact of that means in the future year, you have less capacity to do future projects.
Can you pause so I can ask you to make sure
Absolutely.
I'm following what you're
Absolutely.
saying? So you give Michael Gibson $500,000 for something that costs $300,000. All right, so you're saying the $200,000. If that goes back into the general fund, then it's gonna impact the future year's projects, even though we allocate 5.06 or 6 point something cents to cover future projects year by year. You're telling me that because Michael didn't spend all of that money, that it's already spent, kind of like what you said about the vacation.
So
Help me understand.
absolutely. So first of all, it doesn't come out of general fund, it stays in those capital funds. So to use Michael, the analogy you used with Michael, if we give him $500,000 and he spends 300, that 200, Michael then also is asked for 4 other projects, future years.
That's not the process, because we got it where you bring back a closed out ordinance amendment.
Right, so those are future planning years unallocated. That's what I'm saying. Council can have this 1.3 million right in 2027 is available. The implication or the impact of that would be in 28, 29, 30, 31.
How so if you've already put money in the CIP to cover 28, 29, and 30?
Because that is the money we use to cover those. The 5 cents, or it's 4 cents that you have in dedicated capital. That generates, we'll call it $2 million a year. It generates $8 million a year, or $10 million a year. What we then say is we also, in addition to that $10 million of savings, we have 1.3 million then over those 5 years that we can allocate. So instead of just getting $10 million of projects in the plan, you get 1 year you may get 9, the next year you get 11, the year after that you may get 12, the next year maybe 8. Depends on the flow of the CIP, because not every a project has a life cycle, right? So it spins like this. This is design, construction, FF&E. Okay?
Right.
So when you join 30 projects that are shaped this way together, you are constantly working across that level, and your savings occurs here. So what we try to do is take that savings and plan it across the spectrum so that you have a balanced, it's like Sudoku, down and across. You balance every year, but you also balance the 5 years of the program. If council wants to take this 1.3 million, not a problem. What'll happen is year 3 of your capital program may not have $1.2 million in it because you've taken it this year.
Right, but at the beginning of every year, you forecast how much we're gonna need out of the revenues that are coming in to say whether that's 5.06 cents or that's 6.7 cents or so forth.
Absolutely correct.
And then projects on the next part that we're about to talk about, that you determine what your ebb and flow look like. Council has the ability to move, delay, push back,
Absolutely.
eliminate. Correct?
Absolutely. Council can change the out years of the CIP because they're unappropriated planning years. So what we try to do is we take all those things and try to finish what we start. So we don't want to get here in a project
Right.
halfway through construction, because actually to sign this construction contract, you have
need
to have
the
the
money.
appropriation, right? But if we get into this project and it's higher, that's one thing.
Yeah.
So we come back and say, okay, council, we need another $500,000 because construction prices at the contracting point, or we finish the project. We say, council, we finish this project. We know your priority is sidewalks. So we may take that leftover project money and throw it to sidewalks in the future years. But council absolutely can check, that's a recommendation.
So if we chose to do that, we could use that for one-time funding?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the only caveat to this, is you have to treat it as one-time funding because it's not operational in nature. The other thing I would tell you, just remember, is if we do that.
Take Michael's salary out of it.
Well, and Michael then is one time in nature. But if you did that, just keep in mind that as we go back next year to rebalance the CIP every year, there was somewhere in the future, there may or may not
Right.
be a deduct.
Gotcha.
But we owe it to you, and we're obligated to give you balance across
Sure.
each year and across the 5
But
years.
for right now, it's green.
But for right now, you can absolutely use it.
Is that the right number?
That is the right number. Yes, 1.3 million. It's 1.299, but I gave you a
So
thousand.
should that 1 million be in green also?
You can.
Green
Make you feel better?
Go. Red means
Now, Jeff
Stop.
and Mayor Pro Tem,
Make
the
it pink,
$1 million,
Jeff.
Jeff, is the $1 million that we anticipate that would be unspent for vacancy savings in the current fiscal year.
That's correct.
That would not be, that would be ratified and clarified when we close out half.
Got it.
Correct. And it's gonna impact, it will impact your fund balance calculation because it would have shown up, the actual would have shown up on the other end of the equation in your fund balance. So what we'll say is we'll probably need to reduce our fund balance estimate by that amount, because if you assume you're gonna use it now, it'll reduce your fund balance.
So we were showing, I think, Michelle's in the room, 12.4% fund balance at the end of fiscal year. And so if you take credit for the vacancy now,
But however, before y'all start doing that, hold on.
Okay.
Mr. Jeff, 1 second, before y'all start saying what that number is. Because, accountant's two sides. So if you're saying that you are doing one thing on one side of the equation, you got to do it on the other. So if you're eliminating or grabbing those vacancies and you're not spending it already baked in, then that means whatever department's budget was reduced by that amount. So our fund balance should balance out. You see what I'm saying? So in other words, if you found $1 million out of various departments, you're not counting them as an expense, you're taking it out because you are doing it the way we've asked you to do it, then that means that department's expenses go down. So if you took this money, that Brooke Redding position, let's say, 152,000, you pulled that out because council wants to do something different with it. The expenses of his department went down by 152,000. Is that right?
So what I would say is, again, we're looking at vacancy savings.
I get it. However you got to this number, if you took $1 million and popped it here.
What I'm saying is, we would achieve as in the general fund, you would achieve an additional $1 million of savings. We're not gonna go into every department and pull out $1 million.
Right.
What we're gonna say is, we know our payroll, we've
I
saved,
got it.
we've saved that amount.
Yeah.
So if you ask us to do it surgically and reduce positions, we would need to go back to the
But
department.
what I'm saying is, you're talking, he has just asked you to reduce our fund balance percentage, even though this money was not in fund balance. You already had it baked in other expenses because it never made it back to fund balance. That's how we started this conversation.
Well, okay, so what the manager was saying is, at the end of the year, fund balance is the total of revenues and expenditures. Of that estimated fund balance, we said our payroll, we're gonna underspend payroll probably by 10 million, not 9 million. So our projection on fund balance was $1 million of savings additional to budget, because fund balance is not budget, fund balance is actual. We would add back $1 million more than we had budgeted, okay? So what we would say is, because if we go ahead and spend it, the way the accounting rules work is you are already committing it. So for fund balance purposes, it's like you already spent it. So it reduces, it's a commitment on your fund balance, it's an obligation. If you budget it, well, all we're saying is, that just increases your commitment on your fund balance so that your available fund balance for the purposes of your percentage will go down.
We got it, but as we go down, we're going to change the percentage of our obligation as we go down before you direct on what the fund balance is going to be. So no, hold on. But so basically, it's the same $1 million because you don't have to pay out the number.
Yes.
It's either a matter of where you've chosen to put the savings of the $1 million, or now council is saying that we're going to redirect that. So based on where we redirect that, it's still an expense going out the door. I'm not understanding how fund balance is getting drawn into it.
Okay, so if you have fund balance, and let's pretend for a second that fund balance is $30 million. Okay. Before you do, if your fund balance is 30 million, and we'll ignore long-term liabilities and other things, okay? What GASB requires and what statute requires is that if you have appropriation, okay? If council comes in and says, we're going to appropriate fund balance, and that is $5 million. Okay? And then we have existing appropriations for capital. We'll call that $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay? So those are deducts
Yeah, I got
to your
that.
available fund balance,
I
right?
understand.
So your policy is that this number
Stays above
be
12%.
at 12%,
I understand that.
right? Or 10%, okay?
Right.
What I'm saying is, if council then takes that number and increases it by $1 million for vacancy, you've appropriated, you've made an assumption that you're going to get to that. But we'll see that play out in actual, right? So.
But you don't pay salaries out of fund balance,
No,
no
sir.
way.
But this number is the aggregate of revenue and expenditure, okay? So what we're saying is that because we're gonna spend it on something else, now instead of saving $1 million in your expenditure side, you've increased it $1 million. So what we would have said is this was gonna net you $1 million at the bottom. It's no longer gonna net you $1 million because you would have spent it. So
Once we appropriate.
once you appropriate it.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet. But
Right.
I got
All right.
we haven't gotten there. Yeah.
But I'm just explaining.
When appropriated. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
So our estimates
So
right
can you
now.
write that beside that? When appropriated,
Yep.
and we know
I
the
absolutely
money's
can.
gonna be spent. So that's like
Absolutely
your account. It goes in, then you swipe your card, it's going out. I
Yep.
got you. All right. All right. Jeff, council, you got any more questions for him before we get down to the next?
No, y'all already drilled.
All right. So the next one, Mr. Jeff, the CIP projects, right? The reason this was important is because this shows everything that we've planned to pay out of that. What's the amount that we appropriate that you recommending go toward these things? 6 point what percent of the total amount that comes in? What percentage? How many pennies are going toward?
You have 4
coverage?
cents.
Huh?
You have 4 cents.
Okay.
In your dedicated capital.
Okay.
That's dedicated to capital projects
All right.
of your tax rate.
All right. So out of this, council, is our list of projects by, some of these are by department. So some of them have restrictions for it. Some of them are enterprise funds, which we separated those out. So we know we don't have a lot of bandwidth there. But let's say, for instance, if you're looking at under transportation, Farmers Road.
Yep.
No, let's go to Maker's Space.
Okay.
What page would that be on?
It should be in the Parks and Recreation.
That's under Michael's budget.
G something. It's
Really?
G20 something.
Not yet, but we're about,
G33.
All right. Yeah.
it's in,
All right. So under Makerspace, right,
G29.
shows appropriations.
Way too much.
Which, what's the title at the top of
This is
that?
Parks and Rec Capital Project.
So it's in the Parks and Rec Capital Project
Yeah,
Fund.
Mike.
Okay. Page 6 of the packet we sent you last night, the big 11 by 17. And Maker's. It's on page G27 in your document and on page 6 of the documents we handed out last night.
All right. So, sir, as we look at, council, we all got to it. Are you there?
Here.
Councilwoman McNair, you got it? Yeah, all right.
Too much paper.
So, on the Makerspace facilities, explain to us the appropriations to date. Tell us about that.
Okay, so, and this we'll post this to our website with Budget Chronicles, so I apologize to the crowd, it doesn't have this correctly. So your maker's space, the first column you see is appropriation today. The capital project appropriation today represents the culmination of all the appropriation and action council has taken. So, the 1.6 million is over the life of that project, every council has taken those actions. Then you have the expended encumbered, which means actual expended and what's contracted and committed. Okay, which means we have processed the contract, we've issued a PO, we have an open, what's referred to as an encumbrance, right? So that is about 387. So the project balance as of today is 1.212 million. Okay, that's unencumbered, unspent. 27 recommendation is 450,000.
That's already baked into your numbers.
That's in the recommended CIP.
Right.
The way that that breaks down then on this worksheet is on the other side of this page is the funding sources. 1.6 million came from the general fund. Okay. If you remember, that was made up a portion of the ARPA money, which came to the general fund and back to the makerspace. Then there's 450,000 recommended for 27 for stormwater and parking lot improvements that are that is from project balances within the Parks and Rec Capital Project Fund. So if council wanted to cancel the makerspace
Or
project.
delay or push back a year.
Or delay or push it back, which to achieve the savings, you would have to then bump something in those years because every year is balanced. But if you wanted to, just for easy math, say we're not going to do the makerspace project, you would reduce the recommended budget, you would save 450,000. Then you could get to another 1.2 million once we paid out some bills for the architectural work that's been done, because that other money is already in the project. So if you wanted to liquidate the project, that's what you could close it and get to all of that money or any variation thereof.
Okay. So that's very helpful. So in the event that you said instead of getting this done next year or taking 450 and taking the 1.2 mil that's sitting in there now, you make this 28 or 29, or as you bring this online where you actually have an end game in mind, not like the E. Smith House where we spent money and didn't really know what we were going to do at the end, but we were already into it. But what you're saying is there's a possibility that you can take this money and you can add it by there. We're not talking about where it is and what the impacts are. We get what you're saying, but you've got the flexibility to do that based on what you just said.
Let me repeat back to you what I heard because I want to be sure that it's clear.
Hold on a minute. You mean on the project balance?
So you
Yes,
got 1.2 mil
Right.
that's sitting in there that's unencumbered, and you got another 450 that he's factored into this budget.
Right.
That's so the culmination of those two, you've got the ability to do something different, but it'll have some impact. So if you plan on still doing the makerspace, you can push it back a couple of budget years, or you can do something different. But we're just trying to get to what's available to have that conversation.
That is correct, except what I would just, the one thing I would say is you can't delay it if you take the money. If you take the money or you delay the project in year 3, in 2029, recommended program, then you would have to take a corresponding $1.2 million reduction is somewhere else in the program to balance that year. So if that's fine, if you wanted to take a future year project out and put back in the makerspace in place of it, but you can't take this year's 1.2 million and spend it twice this year
we
and then,
understand that.
right? So it's going to, because they're all balanced years, it will push something out of those years. What that is, that would be a council decision. But you would either not get the makerspace,
or it shows up on our list of things that we plan to do, but doesn't have a funding source, right? We've got a CIP that we used to have that had things on there, but it did not have a column that had source of funds at that time, like future projects, like the River Park, right? You look at the River Park on here, prior to us signing a contract or doing anything, it shows on the list of future projects, but it did not have a dollar amount associated or source.
That I can only speak since I've been here. The CIP that we give you, there will always be a list of projects that the council is looking at. But when we give you the CIP, it's balanced. We do not recommend projects in the CIP that don't have money. So if the council has a list or there's a list of requested but not funded, those projects absolutely exist. But as far as putting money to it and balancing,
MacArthur Road Sports Complex stayed on the list in our documents for 5 years before we got the money. It showed $2 million, but it showed total cost of 21 million. That's not balanced.
I can only speak to
You've been
what I
here since
recommended.
then, right?
Right, so when we put that MacArthur Road at $21 million in, we put in debt, which is what the council approved.
Before we approved it, it was on.
It was a
Our CIP
recommendation,
list.
but once the council
Yeah.
adopted the recommendation, it was in the planning years. You can
So
absolutely.
it's just semantics, but I guess what
Sure.
what we get into today is that we understand that if you take this money, then that means that you've got to replace the money if you plan to do the project or have another source of it.
Well,
Correct.
And
Just continue the project.
to that point,
Or not do it all.
my concern also is we always have a discussion or someone always says, well, why is it costing us more? Because you got to look at the rate of inflation. So the rate of inflation we're in right now, I think is 2.6, but what's projected next year to be 3.81. So there's a lot of difference in those two numbers. So when you're looking at percentages and inflation rates, you really have to balance out what are we willing to pay for the delay? And, cutting or not cutting, or giving an extra penny or not giving an extra penny, it has to be weighed all out.
For sure.
Just let me change the bar just for a moment, because I'm gonna leave a little early. Are we gonna plan to have another budget meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, because we only halfway down, so.
Because I'll try to shorten my appointment, and I'll come back if we were
Yeah,
gonna
no,
try
we
to go
we
longer.
look,
to
we got
get it
to
all
June
done.
the 30th, and I think the people appreciate us doing this.
I totally
Even
agree.
even Mr. Wilkinson's crowd, right, that was doing something different, Elon and them do it, it's called waste, fraud, and abuse. When we do it, it's chaos, so I don't know. But,
So next Thursday.
yeah, or whatever day y'all works,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah. So can we, for the sake of discussion, to move to the next one, understand what Mr. Yates just said is available? Understanding the repercussions if you're moving to do something different, right? So it's basically 450 plus 1.2.
Well, that's not this 1.3.
Huh? I'm not even talking about that.
No, sir.
We're talking
Okay,
about
so
three.
this one right here.
Yeah.
That is completely up to you. If you tell me how many projects you want to take off the CIP, we'll
Well,
be happy. We'll put
right
that
now,
money
we're talking
in.
about the one that's got $1.2
So
million in it. 1.212 plus
That's the
your
maker
recommended
space.
450. So that's for just a second discussion.
One of the things too that, and I don't know if this, Dr. Harris said, getting it back to not including a minimum of the 2 cents for capital, because 2 cents of the 3 cent recommended increase is for capital. So as Jeff said, we can go through all of the projects which are funded or not, but in the presentation that was given where we talked about what you get for the 1 penny, what you get for the 2 pennies as well, that may give you an option to say, in addition to the list you have in front of you, what if you were to say, okay, Doug, go back to 0 increase on the capital side. What projects you might want to give up, and you could then come back and say, I actually want this project that's in at the 1 penny, so I need to find a project that's in under that we need to offset.
Right, understand. I
So
think
I have those
today
presentations if y'all
is
want.
what we're trying to do is get to what the amount is as we go through this. That may or may not be on the list. Yes, sir.
I got a question, though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to go over the new items on the CIP for transportation. I want somebody to explain to me, what is the pavement preservation program 2 for $3.5 million, and the 400 block Hay Street pavement and sidewalks for $500,000?
Tell me where you're at again.
We're on transportation capital projects.
It's on page 7.
Wait a minute, though. I mean, if you don't mind, just before we flip that page, can we stay right here for a moment?
Go ahead. You got something on that page? Go ahead.
Still go back to page 6, because I don't understand why this is here. If you look down to the Glenville Lake project, before I start saying something about it, what project are you talking about?
It's the
Trail.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to say my trail, but is that the trail we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why is that on here? I thought we had already received a was it 1.2, $1.7 million already for that project?
So it's showing it's got 1.8 million sitting in the account, ready to be spent.
Right, and only 300 and something, I think, it came from us. 300,000 or 400,000 only came from the city. The rest of it was what, federal or state dollars?
Federal, yes, sir.
Okay, why is that in on here?
Because it's a project and general fund money is going to support it.
What general fund, the 300 or 400? What
You have to
amount
match
is
it. You have to match it. FAMPO gives us a sum, and then we have to match it. So we have to match it with general fund dollars. So that's why it's a project.
And the general fund dollars is how much, do you know?
I don't know exactly.
Well, and so, to be clear about what's in front of you, this was a request to show what's already in your CIP book, but show it across the page to show you the source of fundings, how much has been spent, so that you can look at all the projects grouped together. That project, as Mayor was saying, has what, I'm not on that page. It had
1.685 of other funding
available to be spent. And so that project, this is not a cutting list. The only way this becomes a cutting list is if you go down every project and say, okay, in 27, there is, I'm just using this because I'm on this page, Parks Recreation Capital Fund project. Second one down is showing recommended for aquatic facility refurbishing at $240,000. So if y'all were to say $240,000, then that would add to the to up here. So you could do it that way, or like I said, we had contemplated what was the additional penny and 2 pennies would go to if approved by council based on recommendation in the presentation we gave y'all on April 8th, and was also in the CIP.
I don't want to be confused. I don't want to be confused. I just thought that I had full clarity that once we received the 1.2 or 3 million from FAMPO, that particular money was locked in. We had it. I thought also with that money that we had already started, I'm thinking that the architect piece is in process right now. That's what I'm telling folk. That's what I told folk yesterday out there at the other pickleball courts.
That's correct. There's
So-
350 encumbered.
Right, the
Are expended
350
already
came
on
from
that
the
project.
fund balance. I'm gonna realize that. I understand that. So I don't understand it, and I do appreciate you saying it's not on the cut list. I just don't understand why we got it on the list, period, because I thought we were already moving in process with work,
The ask
even though it was
was,
in the planning and the architecture work.
and we're not recommending you not do anything other than what's in the recommended
I think
budget.
it's just on there for tracking.
It's just for
But
tracking.
the
It's not
question
on
was,
the
what
1.7.
projects are there? For instance, going back to Makerspace, the 1.65, the only additional funding going to Makerspace is 450,000. Council has taken action to appropriate the other 1.2 million. If council decides to unappropriate that, then that unappropriated money becomes available. So, yeah, it's yes and. Yes, it's been appropriated. Council may by action unappropriate that money, like on Makerspace, and put it back in the pool.
So the Glenville Lake is not moving because it's 2 point something and we've only got 1.8.
No, sir, you have a total appropriation for Glenville Lake
Yeah,
of 2.2 million.
Right.
It's, as far as I know, it's not waiting for additional funding.
It already has the funding.
It has the funding appropriated.
It's not
If you
asking-
So
decide,
you got, where's the other $400,000 there? You got 1.8 that
It's been, they've already
have
spent
sources
350.
for.
you've spent
Spent
350,000,
already.
And you got 1.8 remaining?
and you got 1.85
5
remaining.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
So
So-
if you decided not to do the Glenville Lake
Stop
project.
saying that. Stop saying that, please. So I want to make sure I'm understanding now, because I thought, I just asked for an update.
Yes, sir.
I just asked for an update 2 or 3 days ago. So in the update, there's some movement in the update, isn't it?
The design continues. And we are still working with, and that would include identifying areas that would not compromise PwC's water, whatever that is, around the.
Aren't we past that? I mean, God, why are we,
We've
I
got to
thought we
get-
already had this discussion.
Well, Go ahead, Michael.
The update that you got a couple of months ago, where we went through and we said, here are the impediments. We haven't stopped designing it yet. We're still going the same route that the council approved. Fences, we're still gonna run the trail. Now, once they give us back the construction drawings and we pay for it, it's shovel ready. Now, if somebody says,
We're
well,
waiting on those drawings.
yes, sir.
Now, we've been waiting on them how long?
Probably about 90 days.
90 days. So when am I expecting that?
Well, we're getting an update for you now, just to make sure. But I think what Jeff is saying is, once I have that, now I need the money to say, okay, we're gonna put this out on the street for somebody to build it.
And the money is right here.
Yes, sir. Right now is.
You're not talking right, Mike. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
These may look like ordinary shoes, but they're smart.
Y'all about to make me not want to go to Mount
Jeff,
You good? Jeff, I want to talk about the next page.
I was over here talking.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I had all this noise over here too.
I know. Just for clarification, Jeff, that 1.65 that you have under makerspace, that is the appropriation to date plus the recommended for 2027? Is that where that?
Yes, ma'am. So there's about 1.2 million remaining, so it's not exact.
Okay, there's the remaining amount.
Because if we
So
cancel,
the
we have to
project
pay out.
balance plus the recommended, which, okay, I just want to make sure I
That
was
would be the
getting to the
change to
same
your
math.
recommended,
Okay,
available in your recommended.
all right, thank you.
And we'd have to tune that up just a little bit.
As you were, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, so,
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem. The new items, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
400 Block Hay Street, 490,000, and the
Bike program.
pavement preservation, 3.3 million.
We'll let Byron answer those questions because he has a much better handle on that.
So I'll take the payment preservation program.
Tested for release, designed for life.
Man, turn your phone off, please.
All
I
right,
got Paul's office sending me something, so when I go there, it starts playing commercials.
so the payment, I'll take the pavement preservation program 2 for the recommended $3.3 million. That's pretty much your resurfacing and other surface treatments. You'll see the other funding sources, it's 3.3, that's our POW bill.
Gotcha.
That's our POW bill that goes towards resurfacing and other things. And
Gotcha.
you said the other one, the 400 block Hay Street pavers and sidewalk, essentially from Winslow Street to Ray Avenue on this side of Hay Street. So in front of the police department, in front of City Hall and where Husk used to be. There's a lot of trip hazards in the brick and concrete. You go out there and you can see we've grounded the concrete as best we can, but essentially that brick and concrete needs to come out and be replaced to remove those trip hazards in front of the police department, City Hall, and on up to Ray Avenue.
And what are we doing with the pedestrian supplementary plan? I thought we'd already finished that. Why was 400,000 for that?
That is to start doing project.
It's still an ongoing project?
No, that is to start the.
Oh, that's to start the project?
You did
Oh, okay,
you
okay.
did the
That- we say
study.
no more. We don't want to change that
Okay,
either.
you did the study, this is implementing those projects.
Okay, I got another question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Okay, on that same page, you're on page 7, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, this is something I can understand if there's a discussion to hold up on it a little longer. The pedestrian safety improvements for the Blanton Road extension. Now, this is the Blanton Road extension that would run across Skybow and would come up beside the proposed, at that time, fire station. Okay, well, since we are where we are right now with that fire station, that expenditure, what is it? That I can see
That's 250,000.
it's 400.
The remaining balance is 251,000 because.
I don't even see that number you're saying. 200 and what?
251,992.
Oh, 251,000. I see. Now, that's a piece of money I can understand if we had to take and use and do something else.
Blanton Road.
All right, so that project, the pedestrian safety improvements in Blanton Road extension, if you look over to the right-hand side, it is other funding sources.
That's a grant.
That was state direct grant money that we had. We
Okay.
did a lot of sidewalks, a lot of intersection improvements, and we did the design of the Blanton Road extension. So we have Blanton Road, the extension, the roadway project design, but we don't have a funding source for the construction of Blanton
Because
Road.
no boots on the ground. I mean, that whole, it's not even cut out.
Correct. Our plan, yeah, we have the roadway plans to do that from Rag to Emily or Country. Yeah.
And because the way we received that funding, we couldn't touch that because it has to be used exactly for that or
And
close to that.
And it was used for.
Correct. That's, yes.
All right.
So the dedicated capital pay-as-you-go,
Yes, sir.
explain that column.
So that's that 4 cents. So there's the 4 cents tax rate, which is the dedicated pay-go, and then there's also general fund pay-go, which is addition to the 4 cents that we transfer to the.
So
general
which
fund.
means that anything in this column, basically, is this the accumulated amount of having that 4 cent allocation each year? What does this number represent that's in this
So
column?
what's in that column is how much money that supports the appropriation to date plus the 2027 recommendation. So if you were trying to, say, recoup that money, you would look at the project, take out what's been spent, and the difference between what's been spent and what those pieces are, that's what would be left of the general fund or the dedicated tax rate.
So let's go to Farmers Road for a second.
Sure.
So you got dedicated capital pay-as-you-go rate, which is at 4 cent. So a portion of that 4 cent, $325,000 has been set aside.
Well, in the recommended budget, the 2 cents would go, the 2 cent recommendation in addition to would have been additional to that dedicated tax rate. So it would taking your dedicated tax rate to 6 cents.
Okay. So basically, this 325, so the dedicated pay-as-you-go column only pertains that if you include the 2% tax, because you've got money being dedicated in the no tax option, right?
It's both. So that list of projects that we gave you that were the 1 cent, 2 cent projects in the presentation and in the transmittal letter, those would be the additional projects. If you took those projects out, then you'd be at 4 cents.
Right now, the no tax increase version is 4 cents going to your CIP.
Correct.
Okay.
So the list, if you wanted to know what projects would fall off of that list that you're looking at, it is the list of projects that are in that presentation and in the transmittal. I think Doug actually has, Dr. Hewitt actually has copies of that presentation.
Yeah, I got the, if you did 1 cent, if you did 2 cents, that's like, it's like Christmas. You know, if mama buys you this, then it comes with this. I understand that. But the amount of the rate that we had was always 5-point-something cents. Right? Like, how did you cover future debt? How did you rip that back down if we don't do a tax?
Because council last year, when we did the revow,
Yeah.
5.07 cents would have been with the revow, because remember a penny was $1.5 million.
Right.
$10 million.
Yep, yep.
So when we did, the council said reduce the rate as much as possible.
Yep.
So we did close the revenue neutral on that 5.07, and we took it down by 20% to 4 cents. We didn't get exactly revenue neutral, but what we said was we reduced that rate to closer to generating the same amount of revenue that your original 5 cents.
How much above revenue neutral did we end up at?
16%. 16 point something.
6 cents. It was 38.9, I believe, but we ended up at 44.9. So about 5 cents in total.
Above revenue
15
neutral.
cent
Above the revenue neutral.
6 cents.
6 cents.
So that's a recurring amount, right? So basically what that's saying is that last year, the revenue neutral is if we collected the same amount of money by moving the rate, but we're gonna end up with the same dollar amount. But if we move the rate and instead of taking it down because the values went up, we went above what we received by 6 cent, tax cents, which is equivalent to what dollar amount?
About 2.4 million.
But looking at this though, I want to make sure, Jeff, that I
No, 1
understand
cent
this.
is that.
Well, 1 second, I want to make sure I understand this. The revenue neutral The revenue neutral rate was on your ad valorem tax rate.
We got
We also had the sales tax that you had to
adjust for,
which is,
10 million, 9 million something,
it was,
10 mil. It was 9 point something. So roughly 10. So that amount was 14 mil? So it's a net increase of 4 million, 3 to 4 million after the fluctuation between their recalculation and our above revenue neutral. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, but it didn't all go to, it wasn't in the capital.
I'm just talking about
Right.
money right now. The revenue part, not the expense part. So basically we lost 10, but brought in an extra 14 and a half. Right? Now, how did the valuations change? So I guess it's already factored in. I was gonna say, when the bond was passed, that added extra 2 cents, 3 cents. Authority to tax.
And we adjusted
But when
those
the
rates down.
values went up, that's already captured in here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you got about an extra $3 to $4 million of recurring money in just the difference between last year and this year. See, This is why we gotta make sure that we.
That's too simplistic.
It was 2.348 last year.
But yet, somehow,
That's 26.
we behind.
well, this is what we were last year. And we said, is there something that you want to do less of or not do? And everything was everything from the employee wages to expansion of projects. And so it's kind of hard to look back in that regard. Because again, the budget that you're in right now captured the difference. And this is just the revenue neutral rate that we're talking about?
Above revenue.
Yeah.
But we didn't do resident.
And so,
Talking about something.
I guess are we finished with the, so Jeff, you still around?
Yes.
I'm right here, so I'm just looking for us.
So the geo, so on this one, there was also an appropriation on the Farmers Road for $874,000 coming out of the geo bond, right? So I'm assuming that was the voter approved bond out of the street and road maintenance portion, the infrastructure.
Yes, sir, that was the plan.
Okay,
So
but that money, the revenue's there, but right now, you said 874,000 was programmed there versus on another project. Understanding that money has to be used specifically for in that area, but you've got it right now going to a project that is not funded based on what you said unless 2% of tax increase.
correct, that's why I
So if
showed
the
up on the
2% of
list.
tax increase is not there, then that 874,000 coming out of our geo bond can go
Geo
to
bond
something
eligible
else.
project. So if I could go back to what you were talking about, Mayor, the ad valorem of sales tax. So, and I realize you may not have been here that day that we kind of covered it. But if you look back, and this is on the May 14th presentation, we did a comparison of sales tax and ad valorem taxes because you have to look at them in tandem, right? And what we see is that they're about 140 million. We got in 2025.
It was 26.
I have to pull the other. So if you look at sales taxes, the offset, what the point being in this discussion, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The net between the two, there was not a massive growth between the two. You were right. We see about, for next year, we're going to see about, an ad valorem increase of about 4.7 and a sales tax increase of about 3.5.
Well, what was sales
That's
tax
growth.
increases? Where was-
In 26, you would pull it, it's in the budget document. There's a line item for sales tax. Let me just have staff pull that number for you. That way I don't have to. But to your point, Mayor, the when we set the rate last year, if you remember, the discussion was, how do we continue to do some of the things around public safety and around operations, additional money too, because you and I had the conversation about sales tax. What do you do with sales tax? What do you do with that? So you have to look at the operating budget as an annual appropriation. All the money from those increases and from those changes was allocated and appropriated.
That balanced last year.
That
I'm talking
balanced
about
last
this year, because you'll get a new round of funding with this year's tax.
Well, but
right?
those are ongoing expenses.
I understand.
So that base budget, and the way we do our budget, okay, we come back and say, we start the year with, if the current tax rate is set at the current level, all the revenue estimates, we get down to $210 million. Then we say to the departments, we have $210 million. And they can all tell you this because they hate this process, because it makes them, it's a forced choice process. So we say we have $210 million. Departments, what can you do of your current services at $210 million? Service level 1. Then we say, okay, departments, of your current services at $210 million, what do you lose? What are you not able to do at current services at $210 million? That's service level 2. Then we say at $210 million, now knowing that we have service level 2, what are the other things that you don't currently do that you would like to do, or that you think the community needs, that you see a need for? That's service level 3. And if you remember, Mayor, we do the budgetary landscape. When we had that budgetary landscape, this slide in the strategic planning session, we opened the strategic planning session with this. We said that we know that if we were to fund everything, then and do all of the requests, so it's about 240 million.
So before you go there, I get it.
Right.
That based on what you're saying, that you grew it by this, but your revenues went by that. But the problem, or the thing I'm just trying to make sure we capture accurately is, we left the rate at an amount that's gonna bring us an extra $14.4 million. But we lost $9 to $10 million, right? And so last year, we understand that, okay, you had a bump, but we're gonna use this to balance this out. But now we're at this year.
But you
right?
didn't use that for one-time items. That would absolutely be true if you used it for one-time items. What you did is you said, we're gonna use that to pay for salaries. We're gonna use it to pay for increases, debt, and other things. So you created a commitment, an organizational, current operational commitment, up to the full value of that tax rate.
Right.
It's not.
I get it.
But we're not talking about
To
taking the six
include
down.
how much you set aside for these things. That's the point. Like, out of that money that comes in, out of that chart that you said, this is the total amount of cost that's coming in. Part of that, you're preparing and setting aside for future projects to
That's
be
right.
done.
As council has said, we want to
Right.
dedicate 4 cents to capital. If council wants to say that's 3 cents, absolute council prerogative.
Right.
We've given you our recommendation based on
Right.
the parameters council has told us,
So,
and the project package council adopted.
all right.
If you want to start taking projects out, we hope we've given you it in a format that you can
Sure.
see that and decide to do that.
And you have.
But this is it's your budget, and you can go whichever way
Right.
you want.
So right now, what I'm hearing you say, that something like Farmers Road has 875,000, but it's bond money, which has restrictions, but it's available because you don't have the rest of it to go with it. So is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
And it hasn't been encumbered.
And it hasn't been encumbered.
So if you decided to pull Farmers Road from the recommended
Right.
CIP, you would free up the 800,000 plus money in
But it has
bond
to be
money.
used for something
It
else.
has to be
that-
available. So
that
what we try to
qualifies.
do is maximize all the money that's in the CIP.
Right.
So we probably took it.
So
from
like, we
somewhere
only
else.
got $500,000 for sidewalks, which goes nowhere. Right.
You can put it there.
Yeah.
If that's what council would
Right.
like to do,
So,
absolutely.
so later conversation. All right. So
I know you're trying to move on, but I got two more things when it comes to
Yes,
CIP
sir.
real quick. Let's go over fleet replacement at $4 million. I don't have a problem with the fleet replacement at $4 million. I seen somewhere else where it was fleet for $250,000 and it was just blank. What is the difference?
So the fleet that was $250,000 was, if you remember back when we moved out of Pepsi Lane, a couple of years ago, a year ago, a couple of years, feels like forever ago now, 2 years ago, we said, okay, we need to study an operations center or do some initial planning around what to do with fleet, what to do with solid waste, what to do with all the folks that are Grove Street, because Grove Street is probably an inadequate facility for the long term. So we put $250,000 of planning money into the CIP to plan or to do a needs assessment to figure out what does an operations center look like. We call it a fleet center because that was the impetus. But at this point, what it is look at is that money is to say, if we were to design and go out to, because it would be a bond project probably, to do a city operations center that brought stormwater, solid waste, everybody down on Alexander Street, thank you, and everybody on Grove Street that's operations together into one place instead of spread out, what would be a plan? And that's just an initial look at what that study would be like. That's what the 250,000 is for. It's not for the 4 million you're referring to as actual rolling stock replacement.
So my question is, do we need that 250,000 this year?
If council doesn't, the answer is it's up to you. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can absolutely take it out.
All right, my last question is timekeeping system, $1 million, $950,000. Is that to make sure that the overtime people get paid when they swipe that police department or that city department?
First, everybody's getting paid. So let's not talk about people not getting paid.
All right.
Everybody's getting paid. So let's be clear, because I want everybody to freak out. Everybody's getting paid as they should. What we have right now is a system that is incompatible with our ERP system. We believed it would be, and we were told it would be, but in application, it has not been. So to get everybody and to get an integrated timekeeping system, to make it more efficient and to make it more accurate, so that we don't have to do adjustments and those kinds of things, we are recommending that we spend that money to do that.
How much is that?
It's about $900,000.
$950,000.
The way that is funded. So the way, just finish real quick. The way that is funded, we funded it out of the enterprise because in the original budget for those, the enterprise funds did not pay for any part of Oracle, the ERP implementation, even though they're big users of it. So we allocated those costs as part of that project, total Oracle project, to the enterprise funds. So you can not fund it, but it doesn't gain you anything on the general fund side. Councilman, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Now I got two. I had one, now I got two. So we were told it would integrate, but it didn't.
Yes, sir.
So on the purchasing agreement, we don't have a guarantee, like you told us this was gonna work, it didn't work, take your product back, give us our money back.
That's not how software service agreements work. So the system works for timekeeping. What the system doesn't do is
It doesn't
communicate.
integrate. It doesn't communicate, but we were
Doesn't
told it would
integrate.
communicate, so your product doesn't perform like you said it was gonna perform.
Jeff, I don't know if Tiffany, Jeff.
I can tell you if I purchased something and they told me it was gonna work this way and it didn't work this way, they're not getting paid, I promise you that.
So, the system itself works. So the new software ERP system works. It's the integration with our old timekeeping system that does not work properly. So we're talking about the existing system that we use for timekeeping, trying to get that integrated with the new system.
So the new system works with the new system. It does, the new timekeeping doesn't work with the old timekeeping.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. So then we're paying the 950 shortfall from enterprise funds like stormwater and solid waste?
Yes, sir.
And that's why we need a $10 solid waste increase?
No, it is not why we need a $10 solid waste increase. It is the $10 solid waste increase will pay for the day-to-day operations and the estimated increase in fuel costs. These are one-time monies out of those enterprise funds to pay their fair share of the enterprise system. The enterprise financial system. Because they weren't charged originally.
Just making sure, because I got a little heartburn over that $10 solid waste increase.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Does anybody have any other questions when it comes to CIP?
Probably. What page?
All right, we're gonna move on to number 4, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
What page are we on?
If we could.
Move on to 4.
Was there any other questions on the CIP, y'all?
I mean, just, I don't know how we're gonna proceed forward. I mean, so I mean, it may just be a better comment for later, but I'll just say it now. As we start looking at these individual things and asking individual questions about every line item, which I think in some cases we have to, not saying that we don't. I think the things that we need to look at may be the things that are marked new. They don't have necessarily all of the money, and not in every case. I'm just saying that's a starting place for me, because some of these things we need to finish up before we start into the new.
Right.
So to me, the obvious places are, rather than looking at a time system that needs to be done, because we're either gonna pay now or we're gonna pay later.
That's right.
The piper is coming. To me, you look at the things that are attached to things that aren't, so just for me, for whoever, however I take this hit, I'll take it. Bike lane. Is this something we want to bite off now? Or do we look at moving everything about the bike program off to this year and we say, let's finish up the sidewalk and then move into the bike lane, knowing that after that, it kind of is a progression for me. So that's just how I'm kind of looking at things, and I don't know if that helps anybody else or
Well, I think
confuses, but
no, to me, it's two things. One, I think before we determine how to spend $5 bill, right? If you only got a $5 bill and you've got $6 worth of stuff, before you determine who gets the 5 and who gets none, or who gets 3 and who gets 2, we got to know how much money we have. And to this part of the meeting, if there's $875,000 that can be used for sidewalk acceleration or bike lane acceleration, like, we can make those decisions once we know we got 875,000 or we got 2,875,000. So the first part was just to kind of flush this out, because we wouldn't have been able to see that, because what's happened is decisions have been made because they're the professional staff for what they believe the priorities are from different sources or pots of money. So we've just got a full view of that now. And I think that helps us drive whatever our constituents are telling us they want to see. We hear more people saying they want walkability, and if you don't have crosswalks, you don't have certain things,
right.
You know, or the maintenance, you know, that's right-of-way repair. I don't know how many emails I get that branches are into the sidewalk or grass growing over the curve, or, you know. So I just think we got to find out where the money is, which is the painful part. But then the other part is going to be how we figure out how to prioritize. So I know it's a slug, but I think we'll get some out of it. All right.
Can we?
Okay.
Can we at least look at our calendar and set a date so I'll know that before I leave?
Yes, sir. We'll do it in a second. So I didn't see Councilman McMillan back there, but McMillan, Alejandro's, can y'all let me know, ladies, when he raises?
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments and thoughts are along with what Councilmember Green was expressing, and not to belabor the point, but I think another suggestion is to have a deliverable, a board deliverable for our next meeting. Something we hope to walk away with solidly in terms of our decisions and moving into another phase of this. Also say that in full respect of the questions that have been asked and the need for clarity at this point. But I think it'd be great to walk away from the next meeting with a deliverable that we can say is what we produced during the meeting. But thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Alejandro.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, before we get away from the CIP, on the next page 8, there's a stormwater capital fund. So I had 2 questions. One, the big ticket item there is the person in Russell Street flood mitigation. Where is that funding coming from?
Yeah, FEMA money, right?
So that was, in working with the state, you know, we were awarded the BRIC fund, and the BRIC program was put on hold. It started back. However, in working with the state, they want to transition us to the hazard mitigation, transition us from the BRIC program to HMGP tied to Hurricane Helene relief. So that is state and federal funds. So by going through hazard mitigation, FEMA would pay 75%, the state would pay 25%. So we are moving from BRIC to anticipated hazard mitigation funds.
What's our local match on that project? Ballpark?
Hazard mitigation would be 0.
That's good.
If it's HMGP, because it's tied to the disaster.
And then the last question, the bottom line there, stormwater watershed studies, we got 500,000, kind of,
What, say that
allocated.
loud, brother. What did you say?
27.
Which
Bottom
one?
line, stormwater.
The bottom
watershed
line,
study.
stormwater watershed studies. Where are we with that? And with this completed, or how many watersheds do we have left? Because I know we've done a lot of good work there.
Right, this would complete it, last bit, but also the clarification of the HMGP we're putting in for that grant process, so we haven't been awarded it. I'm not sure, it's towards the end of this year, when we hope to hear about that. So I just want to put that caveat that if we're unsuccessful with that process of receiving those funds through the HMGP process, we would have to look at a revenue bond in the future.
Okay, very good. And then it's not part of CIP, but it's part of stormwater. So we have been talking for like 5 years about a tiered stormwater fee for residential. Where are we with that?
So that was, the tiered rate is in your fee schedule if you adopt it. So it would go on the 2026 tax bill.
And the county's on board with collecting.
We've been working with the county the past 2 years, meeting with them every month since September. We have given them our final billing database. They are testing it in their system.
They're still testing it.
I think they're testing all of their.
It's their pre-testing. They normally would go through it for their databases for the billing cycle.
What is that amount? You said it was going to the tax bill. What's that amount?
It's the tiered rate structure that council gave us the approval to move forward with last May. It's basically the commercial's not going to be billed any differently. We're just using our updated impervious area. So it's more accurate measurement of what's on a commercial site. And then the single family residentials, instead of everybody paying the flat fee, there's 3 different tiers. So the larger square footage of impervious surface a residential property has, the more they'll pay. So it's a little more equitable than just everyone paying the flat fee.
All right.
Can I follow up with that question, Mr. Mayor? We have 2 watershed studies on here. You got 1 and 2. You'll get both of them done in 2026?
The second
Both for
part-
500,000?
Yeah, right. So we have the one is finishing up the what council allocated us to complete in 2019. The 2 is a $500,000 place marker for should there be a large event and we need an additional study in an area that was not previously studied. We have 500,000 set aside to continuously doing ongoing studies as we go along, but it's a one-time 500,000.
And that's all stormwater enterprise.
And lastly, I wanted to follow up on Councilwoman Green's question about bike lanes and sidewalks. And what you made was a great point, because in Transportation Committee, we've already talked about increasing the sidewalks from 5 feet to 6 feet. So you can have bike lanes on sidewalks where they're not in the streets. So that is money that we can look at once we find out where all the money that we do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Council, good job. So, real quick, we'll bounce through these. Want to jump down to the easy ones. I had a conversation with Mr. Floats yesterday, who city was agreeable to a loan, I think, for the investment he was making over there, and I'm sure he'll brief us.
It was 6 mil, right?
Yeah, it was 6 from what? 5.7. All right. He did say that he does not need that for 12 to 18 months, that he has other capital. And so we've encumbered that. You remember we talked about that. That's come out of our current fund balance. But a new agreement will free that up to be programmed out over a couple budget cycles. And he was okay with doing that. So he said that thought about would update the council with brief to get his paperwork updated. And so we can kind of.
And full transparency so that we don't lose sight of what staff said about that. Tiffany and Jeff, if you can again hit, and you heard from Jeff, but Tiffany, if you can hit, if council has made an obligation to loan up to $5.7 million, how the money's still over here, So you have an accounting and a technical component, but you also have the money. I don't want to, this is stuff that.
This is the stadium view project.
Hey.
Erasing all your good words.
I took a picture of it for you.
Yeah, you're correct. He does not need, he said he would not need to borrow the money at this point in time of getting this capital stack and stuff together.
Correct. So at this point, council has taken action where you have appropriated the $5.7 million for that agreement. In order for that agreement to be pre-audited when it comes through, those funds have to be appropriated, which means when you take action to appropriate funding, that was a fund balance appropriation from general fund to the capital project fund, we are going to move that money out of general fund from the fund balance over and appropriate the budget for that fund. So that money is not available for council to.
Even if he doesn't need it for several budget years?
If I may, Mayor.
What?
So let's say
Why
we
can't
did-
it show
Why
up
did you
from
do it
the
for 2026 and
CIP?
can't do it for 2027?
Since he's moved it into the capital fund, why you can't
It's
factor
a
it into that?
financial statement commitment. So if the contract is structured, this is where the contract language gets involved. What Tiffany is saying is, if the contract is a binding agreement for you to pay that money, for her to pre-audit it and make it a valid contract for the state of North Carolina, that money all has to be accounted for and taken out of your fund balance. If you put in that contract a non-appropriation clause, which weakens the contract, commitment, but also gives council the out to say we're going to say $2 million a year for 3 years, for using a round number, $2 million a year for 3 years, subject to the appropriation of council, then the only amount that has to be pre-audited is the $2 million.
So
if you do that, that is how you get to where you want to be, Mayor. But it will weaken your agreement.
right, but he stated that he had other sources that he didn't need. And so you could do it like you did the Cape Fear Theater. You give him 500,
The Cape Fear Theater has a non-appropriation clause.
Right.
So if the council said, I don't want to give Cape Fear Theater $1 more,
Right.
you are under no obligation to give them any money.
Question.
The contract contemplates, hold on just a second, if I may, Councilman.
Yes, sir.
The contemplation when we did the original appropriation was he needed a commitment of those funds. If what you're saying now is he doesn't need the commitment, or that commitment can be looser, if you will.
That's what he said.
Then, and I'm not talking about cash flow, I'm talking about obligation, right?
Yeah. For him to leverage
He may not actually grab that money for 3 years, but from an accounting perspective and under the general statutes and GASB, what you have to do is you have to show that as a commitment because it becomes a liability. Right? So you can't spend that money again.
We get that. We explained to him what our interests was to be able to spread this out, and he affirmed that was okay with him. So now understand what you're saying, but there's some assumptions that I guess you're making that's going to impact his ability to do what he's doing.
The council took action to appropriate the full 5.7. If the council gives direction to Lachelle and the legal team to negotiate a contract that spaces that payment out and includes that non-obligation,
Then
we can bring back an item. You can reduce your appropriation to $2 million.
Right.
Then you freeze up that one-time money out of fund balance for that usage. That's just the mechanics of how you would do it. If that's the council's desire, that's between you, the council, and your attorney. But that's how the deal would have to be structured to be able to do that.
We're tracking.
That's okay.
And I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Cut here.
No, I think you just said it because I was just thinking that sort of we redid our contract to be adjusted between us and Mr. Flowers, then it's okay.
Yes, sir. And what is going to happen is the transaction will complete. When that is done and the assignment and everything else is done, we will develop a development agreement, best way or contract with Mr. Floats, which has all of the bells and whistles in it. And at that point in time, in order for us to sign that contract, we would need to be able to pre-audit and the money would be locked up or subject to these terms here. So I just wanted to say why this is important. The mayor's correct. He said he did not need it for 12 plus months. He didn't see that at the moment. But if we get here and we do and this is for the developers, the mayor and the realtors and folks like that who have done these kind of big projects, when you're putting together what they call your capital stack, you've got to be able to go to the bank and say, I have a commitment to borrow this much money. He may not need all of your 5.7 in year one, but when he goes and shows his capital stack to everybody, he's got to be able to say, this is a yes, this is a no. And so whenever that hits, whenever we bring you that contract, the city attorney and others are going to be negotiating. If you have not locked up the 5.7 then if we come back in October, we come back in February, and we've got to lock up 5.7, even for his capital stack. Again, it's just not saying we can't do what the mayor's suggesting, but I just want to make sure that if you come back with that later, you understand.
So a legal question for you. Any contract that we have with anybody has a clause that's subject to the budget being approved by, because we can't find something for the next 10 years that a future council will pay. Can you explain that piece?
Yes, sir. It's a standard provision in all of our contracts, the non-appropriation clause.
Including this contract?
Including this contract. However, we don't currently have a contract or a loan commitment for this deal.
Right. So basically, what we heard the other day procedurally was that once you do a contract, you've got to set this money aside. So we've got money set aside based on.
Well, I don't think that that's the intention. So what you heard is that once we have a contract and that contract needs to be pre-audited, the funds need to be obligated and set aside. Therefore, I can't do the pre-audit, sir. So in this case, we don't have the agreement yet, but the council has taken action to set aside funds. So that when the agreement, and you gave direction to the manager, the attorney to go ahead and negotiate with the developers to develop that agreement. So they have been working behind the scenes to do that, to bring forth an agreement to be signed.
Right, understood.
So once that agreement comes, we have the funds set aside.
You have to set aside the funds to match the agreement.
Not match the agreement.
Well, let me put it this way. Council action needs to match the agreement, and your funds need to match council's action. That'd be a problem.
No, sir.
Okay,
Can Mayor Coleman, if I may, I don't know, and I'm not a money person, but, so for example, using the round numbers with the 6 million, the city would issue, the first step would be to issue the loan commitment letter, and that goes into the capital stack, okay? At that point, we've committed to the money. We've not formally committed the money. Formally.
Even though they have.
You guys have appropriated it, but as to the developer.
Right.
As to the developer, though, it has not been formally.
All right, because you don't have it
committed
Right,
to a loan
but I think
commitment letter.
you're mixing a couple of things, Mayor.
Well, let me finish that if I may, because you're on I wanted to kind of go through the legal side of it, which that's where I'm headed. The first step would be the loan commitment letter. Okay, so then let's say we enter into the agreement for $6 million. With the non-appropriation clause, when CFO Murray goes to pre-audit it, which she must do before we can pay it, she will look to see, number one, does it have a non-appropriation clause? If it does, we could potentially just do the 2 million. Is that correct? As opposed to having to pre-audit for the full 6 million.
Depending on the terms of the contract.
Generally, as to pre-audit and non-appropriation. That's what we're trying to get the general public and the council to understand generally. Is that true? Generally.
If it was, depends on the terms of the contract. If the contract is a non-appropriation that we're gonna do it in multiple payments, 2 years, then yes, but if not.
Well, that's what we're trying to just.
Depends on the
get an
terms of the
understanding
contract.
generally.
Which is where I started at.
But I
So
would-
the contract dictates it, even though you're saying we took action without a contract, right? Because we don't have an agreement to give anybody anything. You just set aside and encumbered money because we did an action.
Right, so council, if you wanted to unencumber that money,
We have to do an action.
you just
to
take an action to unencumber it,
And-
because that's where the budget and the nexus of the contract and the budget come into play. The first step really is not the contract, the first step is the appropriation. Because to do the contract, you have to have the appropriation. However, council wants to budget for it, that's what ends up in the financial
Okay,
statements.
well, we get it. So we can undo it.
That's exactly it.
That's
it.
in the
That's the
contract,
concept. That's what
and then in terms of the contract, it depends how we redo it. All right, Councilman.
I would like to make a consensus motion to come to consent Monday. To direct staff to, when we give them the full commitment, loan commitment letter, when we do the agreement, to have the appropriation over 2 years, 2.7 million in fiscal year 27, 3 million in fiscal year 28. That'll free up $3 million in appropriation, correct?
It'll free up fund balance.
Yeah.
So one
Very
time
good.
money. One time.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
we'll-
think you can do the following.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor, but do we also first have to uncover what we have already?
You have to reverse the action.
Reverse the action that we have already done first, before we can do that
Let's
action?
do that.
But
Mr.
look,
Meaton.
but do we speak to him at all?
We did that
Yeah,
already.
we talked to him yesterday. That's how he told us what he needed and what he didn't need right now.
Let's do that yesterday.
And I would just want to say, we can do that at any point in time. One of the things, Mayor, Tiffany.
Let me deal with this motion.
Yeah.
Real quick.
I wanted to do that before y'all dealt with, if I could, just.
Got a first and a second.
And I want to just provide this context to you, is that, as we spoke with Mr. Floach yesterday, and where we are in his overall transactions, I would hate for us, we asked him a specific question. Do you think that you're going to need access to the city's loan commitment in the next 12 to 18 months? That's what he said. He said he did not need it. We did not necessarily speak to, and he was not prepared with his financial folks to say what he needed, when he, and how he might need it. But if you take action on Monday and we are negotiated with him and it needs to be modified, we can do that as well. I wanted to, but so.
See, that's what I'm saying though. So is he gonna sign off to that?
Yes, well, they don't have an agreement, and which was what he said. He said, I have no problem doing that. And right now, and I said, well, we need to update your agreement. And he said, we don't have an agreement. So my point is, we've encumbered this based on some verbal conversations, but they've got an accounting process that they have to follow once we did that.
The funds are not encumbered, the funds are
Appropriated.
appropriated. And,
But still can't be used.
the only
Comes out of
way,
the calculation.
well, right now, the funds are appropriated for that purpose. So if the board or the council would like to take action to unappropriate the funds, then you have to do it by another action. So
Yes, ma'am.
you would have to, we would have to bring that ordinance back to the board and ask that you reduce those funds.
Right. So count. I need to speak to you guys about your motion real quick.
Yep.
So is it for direction for them to come back to the board after they engage with Mr. Float and get the terms of the need to see if the proposed way that you just put in your motion, if there would be, they would come back to us with an ordinance that reflects that conversation? Is that what your motion is?
It can be. I can amend it to that.
All right.
If that's
Mayor
what.
Pro Tem, is that your understanding of
we
it?
need to
Yes,
do.
but I thought my first question was, do we have to unappropriate the funds?
You do,
First.
but
before
what
we
they're
do
saying is they gotta get a draft ordinance. So is that the case? Do y'all have to have an ordinance ready and drafted, or if we unappropriated that now to give you the freedom to be able to do something different?
If that's the direction of council, when we bring you in the next couple of weeks, because you only have a meeting on Monday, regular meeting, and you have the regular meeting on the 22nd. And at the 22nd is when we would adopt a budget. We could have that as one of the associated budget actions to do everything, and that would give us enough time to
So-
talk to Mr. Flood
Right.
as well.
My question is though, to unappropriate it, you don't have to have that ordinance drafted now. If action was taken here, they would draft the ordinance and I would sign it if council passes it, right?
Yes, so but again, if that's the council's direction, one of the things that,
You're gonna turn around and fix it in a week once you have the specifics from Mr. Close. They're just saying that they're gonna unpack what was done.
right, and so where we were and where we started, and I hate that Dr. Hare left, is that, yes, let's say you free up $6 million of fund balance. How do you wish or propose to use that freedom? Because if we take this action and then there's not a need for all the other cuts that you're making to do it, how how the process has worked for 20 years, and definitely for the last, since I've been the manager since 2015, is that we present you the budget, with hits or misses, and you do a parking lot. The council goes through the parking lot and says, we want more of this, less of this, more of this, less of that. You missed the mark on this. We don't see this, we want more of that. And then you give us that direction like you're doing now on the Peter Floats thing, but you give it to us as a group. And we come back with a scenario that allows you to fund that either in the recommended tax rate or lower tax rate. And only bring that up to say that if you look at, if the $6 million is freed up, which that's a little bit, 2.5 pennies.
So let me,
Because what I'm saying with it is,
let me go here, Mr. Hewitt, before you go there. So if what we presented, what was presented to us the last 3 of these meetings is that we've got to go to our citizens and ask for more money to do stuff that council said it wants done. So how it's used, we haven't even got to that question yet. What we're trying to work is what the amount is that is available for use. So these actions that are leading us to the answer to that. So I think what you're saying is stop looking and asking about this. Just tell us what you want to get done and let us figure this out.
No, sir.
Which we respect that, but we're into this process now because we've had 3 meetings to where we've been presented and said, we're not going to be able to do anything unless you do more. And so now we're looking at what we can do less of or do differently to be able to work through the parking lot. So we're not even on parking lot just yet. But let me address this motion because we've got about 6 minutes. So this just puts us back to square one. They'll come back in a week and give him an opportunity to tell us.
The only caveat to that, though, Mayor, is that when you reduce that appropriation, if the agreement is $5.7 million,
You don't have an agreement.
well, but if that was your commitment, and if the agreement comes back and says 3 million, that's fine. You now have 2.7 million of one-time money you can do something else with. The challenge is that when you get to 28, and he needs that money for your second payment, you're gonna have to pay for that.
We understand that.
Okay.
And so you're also gonna have 28 years worth of revenues, because this is just a one-time deal. So you took money that was in the pot from this year's one-time money to use
I
it
took it
for
from your,
something.
the council took it from fund balance.
Right.
So that is not.
This year's fund balance.
But they're not separate years. Your fund balance is a cumulative activity, right? So when you spend it now, it won't be available in the future.
Right.
So when you get to that year, when we look at inflation.
Would you say fund balance goes up and down year to year?
Yes.
I would,
All
but so
right.
do expenditures and revenue.
You're right.
So just like we have to budget for Cape Fear's contract out of current revenue, you are taking current revenue from somewhere else in the organization.
We got it, Jeff.
I just want to I just don't want you to get to 28 and say, why didn't we know about it?
thank you.
We got it.
So
Mr. Mayor, I think our mission today was on this side is to make sure that we have 3 cents.
Right.
So we can fund everything that was proposed, that was in the recommended budget.
Correct.
That's the purpose of us doing what we're trying to do on this side, for us to find that additional funding so we can do that. And I think with not just the 5.7, but even the 2.5 or the 3 million from Mr. Floats, we'll be able to do that.
Right. So
let's
you
get
had
back
a
to the
motion by Councilman Hodges, had a second by yourself.
Can
And
repeat that? Can you restate that?
This is a consensus motion, so staff will have to come back.
you're in a special meeting, boss.
We are, but that's why I specifically made a consensus
Okay.
motion, so that staff can come back with a consent for a resolution that will replace the first resolution to try to negotiate this so we can appropriate it over 2 years instead of 1.
That's what you understand, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, and the numbers could either be 2.7 for 1 year and 3 for the next. or vice
2.7
versa.
for this year, 3 billion for next.
All right. Y'all clear?
I just want to hear the money.
So it's a consensus.
Repeat
That's
that again.
all.
2.7 for the first year and 3 for the next year.
All right.
2 consecutive years to make up
All
the
right.
5.7.
All right. Show, councilors.
If I may, what is it that the council would like the staff to bring back?
A new resolution to replace the
Contract.
previous resolution, right? So this will substitute the first one that was for the whole 5.7 to try to negotiate with the developer to appropriate it. So we'll give them the full loan commitment letter. We'll appropriate it per the contract over 2 years, 2.7 in 2027, 3 million in 2028.
If I may, so the mayor.
I'm sorry.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, we're not at the point of issuing the loan commitment, but what I'm hearing you say is we'll do a capital project ordinance, or what are we doing,
We'll
Judge?
amend the current one.
You already have an existing one, so you'd have to amend your current, it'd be a CPOA.
Okay, we're
To
gonna
change
bring
the
back a
terms of the
CPOA.
appropriation.
Will that also reverse what they already did, or will that only take care of the new?
We'll have to restate it. So
Okay,
we'll reduce, it'll be a reduction to the existing appropriation. So
okay, so this is the manager's bringing back.
Yeah, that's not legal. You're just getting the contract that'll support all this.
Yes, sir, I'm
Because
good.
right now, it's just a nod and a wink.
I'm good then.
There's no contract.
Mhm.
All right, council. So, yes, ma'am, you
So
have a
you're
question?
saying we found some money?
We about to write on the board for you.
I just want to hear.
Yes,
What you
ma'am.
saying?
Finding money. Got the gold shovels out and the lights on our head. Ready for the vote. All right, so council, look to you for,
We have it.
we're on the sure, right?
Yes.
You're on the sure system? Yes. Okay. All right, Councilwoman McMillan, you
Making my notes off. Yeah.
Ready.
red. All right. Councilman Davis, you already voted? Green. All right. So we got consensus. Jen, you capture that?
Does hair count?
Who hadn't voted?
Does hair count?
You're missing one.
Yes, because he wasn't
Yeah.
excused.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilmember Hare did not get excused,
So
so
he's
his
he's
is in
agreeing.
the affirmative as well.
All right, and last thing before I have to tip out council, the current fund balance percentage, right? So notwithstanding what we just did, because we understand that's gonna change, but this year's fund balance percentage as we know it, what is that number?
so,
Not including what we just did. Right.
not including what we just did,
Yes, sir.
based on the recommended budget, because the recommended budget will be part of your 26 fund balance calculation.
Okay, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. Can we get our current fund balance as close of an estimate as you have
That's what I'm-
at this moment?
That's what I'm about
So
to give you.
why'd you add the caveat about the
Because
recommended budget?
when you adopt your budget,
We're not talking about that.
but you can't do the estimated fund balance without, it's incomplete.
So if we were 3 months from this point, you wouldn't be able to give us a check-in to say how much money are we holding in our fund balance?
Three.
What I would tell you is the projected fund balance for the end of the year would have to include that. You have to include, by GASB standards, your fund balance is a calculation of your commitments.
Right.
So you have to include something for the following year unless you're gonna say, we're not appropriating any fund balance for next year.
Right. Had we had this conversation in January, you would still be using the same methodology that you're talking
Yes,
about. You'd be talking about
absolutely.
what the recommended budget for
It would be more
2027.
estimated than actual.
Okay, all right.
So what we have in front of us is the recommendation.
Okay.
And that's the closest now to approximation to the estimate we can give you. Otherwise, we woefully understated.
Okay.
So so Mayor, this isn't exactly how.
Yeah, I know, I understand.
So
Answer the best you can.
at 12%, you have about 1.08 million at your 10% level. These aren't additive, so this, with the 1/8 is included in your 10% level. You have 5.5 of, you have 5.5 million. There you go.
Over, you mean?
Over, that's above your level.
All right, so the question is, this factors in your recommended 27 budget. If we adopted it as you presented it, correct? So
Correct.
does that take into account any of the things that you've heard us talking about doing differently today?
No, sir, because the fund balance usage for 2020, recommended 2027 was to pay off debt. So if you tell us you don't want to pay off debt.
No, not saying it.
Or for one-time items, we can pull out the one-time item list and not do it. Both of those together about 2.4
we spent a
million.
good bit of time on one-time item list, so you've got that factored in here too as well?
What's the one-time items?
Like, we've got 452 makerspace out of this.
So that's
Did
not
you
part
take that
this
out of the
that's not
number?
part of this calculation.
Yeah, so that's what
This
I'm
is
saying.
only general fund.
So, right.
So the makerspace money is coming from capital
From
funds.
CIP, okay.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the 12 and
Gotcha.
12 and 10.
All right.
So you could theoretically, if you spent $5.5 million more fund balance, run it down to your 10%.
We're not doing it.
So,
And not to mention has nothing to do with this.
right,
Peter
so
Flo's
if you
discussion.
did, if this was what you wanted to do, you could add back, you get 4.08 million, give or take, estimated, it was not gonna be exactly that. You could add that back. If you did, now what I would say is on this piece right here, if you spend it now, it will have an impact on this number by the end of the year. So it may reduce this number.
Okay.
But we
both balance off, and they both $1 million.
So I wouldn't recommend doing both. If you want to spend it here, I would say I would ignore this because this becomes this at the end of the year. Does that make sense? So I would do either or.
Not both.
But not both.
So if you did Peter Floats, the 1.08 and the 1.3, that's $5.5 million.
Well, this is out of capital, so that doesn't go to that number. But you could reallocate
Money. That's one time, use it for other one-time funding.
Yeah, if council wanted to take an action and said, we want to move all that money back to the fund balance in the general fund.
Then it drops.
And we'd have to do a little bit of analysis, but you could undo all, you could move it all back. That just takes a council action. Or you could reallocate it because the closed projects is across all the capital funds. It's not in one place. Does that kind of make sense? So if that council just needs to direct us that that's what they want to do.
Yes, sir. Two things before you leave, Mr. Mayor. First, let's set another scheduled budget.
Yeah. What's a week from today?
Thursday, 10th, today's the 4th.
Just keep it.
That's, it's the 11th is.
We have what?
Any of those committee meetings can be readjusted, right?
That's okay. We can be there. Start at 10. We'll be finished by 1.
Ish.
7 months
What
to my
committee is it?
birthday. That is. So can we set that date, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Just
Y'all want to, do we need council action for that special meeting, or I can do it like we did this?
You can recess this one too.
Yeah, you can either
So,
call it as is your right, or we can recess
So,
this
Council, if y'all-
meeting and continue it next meeting.
You need
to leave today?
All right, but you good for next week? Yeah. All right, so can we do a recess?
We can do a recess, but before we recess, Mr. Mayor, can we ask staff to come back to us to see what Peter Floats 1 million, the 1.8 of the 12%, and use the 1.3 for one-time funding to come back and see if that would be balanced with all the recommendations of the 3 cents? Can we do that, Jeff?
So the 2 cents, yes, on the capital.
Understand if we don't.
On the, because none of this is really operating, the penny for operations, you wouldn't be able to make that up with this funding.
Okay.
Now, I put on here, Mayor, just for your edification.
I was tracking 700, so.
Yeah,
we
it's-
have to talk about
This
that.
is plus, it's not an add back. It'll cost you more to do the bonus, 2.5 bonus steps. The way that it worked out, it'll cost
That
about
was the problem. We
$326,000
were
more.
not talking about the steps, because you weren't talking about
Right,
the
but you
steps.
still have to pay the steps.
You still had to pay it, but it wasn't in your 4% number, right?
Yes, the 4.9 million included all
So
the
you were doing
steps.
step plus 4% to the step folks.
No, it was steps.
Right.
All step employees would get their step.
We're not talking about that. Yeah.
Okay. Then all non-step employees would
Right.
get 4%.
But in the book,
Yeah,
And
but
then-
the step is in the police's number already, correct?
No, the step is in the $4.9 million of the total compensation increase. All the steps, 4% for non-step employees and 1% for COLA, or for 1% for 401K.
So what, that's a 1% addition, so what are we currently matching on? 401?
We don't match.
So there's no money going to 401?
No,
you're at 4.9. In your
Yeah.
book on page 19 of the Chronicles,
that's correct.
it's 4.182. You deduct 4.182 from 4.9, it's more than 326.
That was based on, that was incorrect. So when you sit down and you say all the step employees get their step,
And we will clean that up and we will do it
Yeah,
line
but
by
I was coming up
line.
with 770 something thousand.
and it was,
And it was 2 pots of money. One was a one-time deal and one was a recurring deal. So you mean to tell me it didn't free up any capacity on the recurring side?
if you want to if you want to do one time out of one time,
If it's a bonus, it's one time. It's not a recurring.
you can do that. wouldn't recommend paying any compensation out of one-time money. But you can.
So even though bonus is not recurring, so you would appropriate and set up a recurring I mean, how do you?
I think if you're going to spend down fund balance for compensation, that's going to raise the interest of the LGC. But if that's council's direction, if you want us to calculate that,
Of course not.
we can put together.
But so our bonuses have any?
The bonuses cost you more than doing the percentages.
We're not talking about a comparison on that. I'm just saying the source of how it's paid. So there is no accounting principle that shows how you can pay an employee a one-time thing, and you've got to have a set aside dedicated.
No, sir, I'm not talking about accounting principle.
Okay.
On an accounting basis, you absolutely can do it. What I'm telling you is on a best practice
Yeah,
and an LGC interest basis, it's not recommended. So if council would like to do it, it's
Why
not
would we
illegal
do
or
something
moral.
that's not recommended?
So that's what I'm doing. It's not
You
recommended. I mean,
asked
we're
me,
experts.
Mayor, that's what you asked me.
Right, but I didn't, yeah. So the only reason, what I was posing to you is that the only option that is within the best practice that you are aware of?
That you pay for it out of ongoing funds?
Yeah, so if you're a corporation, you do well this year, but not next year. I know you got different rules. You can't bonus your people. Because when we did it before, what was the source of funds when we did it before? Did we violate accounting principles?
Used ARPA funds, and I never said you were violating an accounting principle, Mayor.
Did we violate best practices?
When using the ARPA funds? No.
They
In
were
that case,
one-time ARPA
because
funds,
it
right?
wasn't, it was ARPA funds, and that was this designation that came from the federal government that was allowed use. If you would like us to calculate it and show it separately and say the 1,500 is separate and one time, you can absolutely do that. I'm just advising.
Just check in with the LGC. Of course, we're not gonna ask you to do something that they don't approve of. Or maybe we can just ask Mr. Bowler, he's down here often.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
If you'd like, you can call it.
if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can we just ask them to come back and see what it would look like without the one-time bonus and the 4% and 3% and give us what that number would be so we can work that next Thursday?
And so the question is, just to make sure I'm clear, you're saying right now, we don't have any match that we're doing with our staff for their 401k? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Correct.
Zero.
No, we don't. We are paying 4%. That's not based on a match. That is compensation. So the recommendation is to go to 5% and equalize everybody with PD. So right now you pay PD, sworn officers, not all PD, but sworn officers.
So you just got it separated in the proposed budget at 4 plus 1.
All the other employees. You have a statutory obligation to pay these sworn employees.
Right.
So that's already part of your budget. This is the additional compensation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we compared them, 1% costs one thing, 4% compensation costs another because it's 4% off of midpoint. 1,500 costs another because it's a different pot of people. Their step plan has cost, but we're not mixing the two. When we say it's going to be $300,000 more than 4.9, which is what we set aside, and we can reflect that. If you want to show it as one time, we can absolutely do that. If you want to, then the cost of it is still more than the 4.9. If you want to split it between one time and ongoing, then you can make it less than 4.9. That's the decision point.
Okay, but you'll send us something with your work on there and maybe something that.
I believe it's one of the
recommendation
last
that I have.
chronicle questions that we provided to you last night.
3 and 4%, Mr. Yates, if you don't mind.
All right.
Did you want to recess this?
Yeah,
meeting, Mr. Mayor?
if y'all wouldn't mind.
Yes.
Do we vote on that motion?
That's what I need them to.
Yes.
Oh,
Are we
yeah.
ready to? Mr. Mayor, I move that we recess this meeting and pick it back up at 10 o'clock on the 11th.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Alejandro. Discussion. All right, Councilman Miller.
Drop off, sir. He just dropped off.
All right, well, he definitely needs to recess then. Who else we got?
We only got 7 of us here.
Oh.
This is one more. Here we go.
All right, good meeting, y'all.
Thank you, sir.
We'll continue. Thank y'all, staff. You did a great job.
And Mayor,
Apologize if we got